under a blood moon, Vargfjell burns with a curse. Eirik and Astrid hunt a traitor in their bloodline, facing shadowy gods and betrayal. Will they break the curse or be consumed? Comment below for more epic tales. Chapter 1. The Crimson Omen. The wind howled like a wounded beast across the jagged cliffs of Vargfjell, carrying the scent of salt and iron. The sea below churned, its waves crashing against the rocks with a fury that mirrored the unease in the hearts of Clan Herfen. Torches flickered outside the longhouse, their flames dancing wildly, as if they too sensed the coming storm. Above, the sky was a tapestry of bruised clouds, torn apart to reveal a moon that bled crimson, its light casting an unnatural glow over the rugged fjord. For 30 years, the blood moon had been a whispered legend among the clan, a tale told by firelight to frighten children and remind warriors of their ancestors' sins. But tonight, it was no story. Tonight, it hung heavy in the sky, a harbinger of the curse that had plagued their bloodline for generations. Every 30 years, it woke. Every 30 years, it demanded a price, and only a traitor, the sagas said, could break it. Eirik Rafnson stood at the edge of the cliff, his broad shoulders squared against the wind. His cloak, woven with raven feathers, snapped behind him like the wings of the clan's namesake. At 32 winters, he was no longer the reckless boy who'd once dreamed of glory on distant shores. He was Jarl, now, chosen by the clan after his father's death in a raid gone wrong. His dark beard was flecked with early gray, and his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the horizon as if he could will the moon to retreat. "Do you feel it, Eirik?" came a low voice behind him. He turned to see Astrid, his younger sister, stepping from the shadows. Her braid, thick and black as night, swung over her shoulder, and her green eyes glinted with a fire that matched the torches. She was no shield maiden, not yet, but her spirit burned brighter than most warriors Eirik had fought beside. At 20, she carried the weight of their family's legacy with a defiance that both comforted and unsettled him. "Feel what?" Eirik's voice was gruff, but he knew what she meant. The air itself felt wrong, too heavy, too alive, as if it pulsed with something ancient and malevolent. "The curse," Astrid said, stepping closer. Her hand rested on the hilt of the dagger at her belt, a habit she'd picked up from there. "Father, it's here. I dreamed of it last night. Blood on the snow, ravens circling, and a shadow that wore our father's face." Eirik's jaw tightened. He wanted to dismiss her words as the fancies of youth, but the blood moon loomed above them, undeniable. "Dreams are just dreams," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. "The gods don't speak so clearly. Then why are you out here, staring at that cursed moon?" Astrid's voice was sharp, but there was fear in it too. She pointed to the longhouse, where the clan had gathered. "They're waiting for you, Eirik. They're scared. And you're out here avoiding them." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned back to the sea, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. The blade had been his father's, and his father's before him, a relic of their bloodline, etched with runes that no one in the clan could fully decipher. Eirik had always thought the stories of the curse were half-truths, tales spun to keep the clan in line. But tonight, the weight of those runes felt heavier, as if they whispered secrets he wasn't ready to hear. Inside the longhouse, the air was thick with smoke and tension. The clan sat around the long fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. Warriors, farmers, and elders alike murmured in low tones, their eyes darting to the door as Eirik entered, Astrid at his heels. The hall was a fortress of timber and stone, its walls adorned with shields and the skulls of beasts felled in hunts. At the far end, a carved wooden statue of Odin stared down, one eye seeming to follow Eirik as he took his place at the head of the table. "Jarl Eirik," called out Bjorn, a grizzled warrior with a scar that split his face from brow to chin. "The moon rises, and the sagas speak of doom. What say you? Is this the night the curse wakes?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Eirik. He could feel the weight of their expectations, their fear. He wanted to tell them it was nothing, that they would face the dawn as they always had. But the memory of the crimson moon burned in his mind, and Astrid's words about her dream gnawed at him. The sagas are old, Eirik said, his voice steady, despite the doubt in his chest. They speak of a curse, yes, but they also speak of strength. We are Clan Hraf. We've faced storms, raiders, and God's wrath before. If this curse is real, we'll meet it with steel and fire. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, but it was half-hearted. Eirik's words were bold, but they didn't erase the unease that clung to the room like damp rot. He glanced at Astrid, who stood near the fire, her expression unreadable. She didn't believe his bravado any more than he did, before anyone could speak again. The doors of the longhouse burst open, letting in a gust of icy wind. A figure staggered inside, cloaked in furs and dripping with seawater. It was Sigrid, the clan seer, her white hair wild and her eyes wide with something that looked like madness. She was older than anyone could remember, but her presence commanded the room. She leaned on a gnarled staff, its tip carved with runes that glowed faintly under the firelight. The blood moon speaks. Sigrid's voice was a rasp, like stones grinding together. She pointed a bony finger at Eirik. The curse is awake. Jarl, it stirs in the blood of Herfin. One among you will betray, and only through betrayal will the curse be broken. The clan erupted into whispers. Eirik felt a chill run down his spine. Speak plainly, Sigrid, he demanded. What betrayal? Who? The seer's eyes darted around the room, lingering on faces before settling back on Eirik. The gods do not name the traitor, but the curse demands a price. Blood for blood, kin for kin. By dawn, you will know. Astrid stepped forward, her voice cutting through the murmurs. And if we do nothing, if we defy this curse? Sigrid's laugh was a dry, hollow thing. Defy it, girl, and the clan will fall. The blood moon does not forgive. The words hung in the air, heavy as a warhammer. Eirik's mind raced. He thought of his father's death, the raid that had gone wrong all those years ago. The whispers that had followed rumors that someone in the clan had betrayed them, leading their enemies to the shore. He'd never believed it, not truly. But now, with the blood moon glaring down, doubt crept in like a thief. Enough, Eirik said, slamming his fist on the table. The sound silenced the room. We are not children to be frightened by old women's tales, Sigrid. If the gods have more to say, let them say it through steel or storm. Until then, we prepare. Bjorn, double the watch. Astrid, see to the weapons. If this curse is real, it won't catch us sleeping. The clan moved into action. There, fear channeled into purpose. But, as they dispersed, Eirik caught a glance from his cousin, Leif, who lingered near the fire. Leif was tall and lean, with a fox's cunning in his eyes. He'd always been ambitious, too much so for Eirik's liking. Their fathers had been brothers, but their bond had soured long before Eirik was born, torn apart by some feud no one spoke of. Leif's gaze held something unreadable in V, perhaps, or something darker. Careful, cousin, Leif said softly, his voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. A Jarl who ignores the gods might find himself alone. Eirik's hand twitched toward Stormfang, but he held himself still. And a man who speaks in riddles might find his tongue cut out, he replied, his tone cold. Leif smirked, then turned and melted into the crowd. Eirik watched him go, a knot tightening in his gut. He didn't trust Leif, hadn't since they were boys. But betrayal? That was a word too heavy to throw around lightly. As the night deepened, the clan worked to fortify the village. Warriors sharpened axes, women and children hauled supplies to the longhouse, and the air buzzed with nervous energy. Astrid found Eirik near the forge, where the smith was hammering out new spearheads. The clang of metal was a comfort, a reminder of the tangible world. You don't believe her, do you? Astrid asked, her voice low. Sigurd's talk of betrayal. Eirik wiped sweat from his brow, though the night was cold. I believe the clan is scared, and fear makes men do foolish things. If there's a curse, it's in our own hearts, not the moon. Astrid's eyes narrowed. And what if she's right? What if one of us trailed off, her gaze drifting to the longhouse, where Leif was speaking to a group of younger warriors? Don't, Eirik said sharply. We don't accuse without proof. Not Leif, not anyone. But the seed was planted, and Eirik couldn't shake it. The rest of the night passed in a blur of preparations, but the crimson moon seemed to grow larger, its light seeping into every corner of Vargfjell. By the time the first gray streaks of dawn appeared, Eirik was exhausted, his mind tangled with doubt and suspicion. Then it happened. A scream tore through the village, sharp and desperate. Eirik sprinted toward the sound, Stormfang drawn, Astrid at his side. They found a crowd gathered near the stables, their faces pale. Bjorn knelt beside a body, his hands stained red. It was Sigrid, her throat slashed, her staff broken beside. Her eyes, still open, stared at the fading blood moon, as if accusing it. Gods, Astrid whispered, her hand gripping her dagger. Eirik's heart pounded. He scanned the crowd, searching for Leif, but his cousin was nowhere to be seen. The clan murmured, their fear now a living thing, clawing at the edges of their resolve. Who did this? Eirik roared, his voice shaking the silence. No one answered, but the weight of Sigurd's words pressed down on them all. One among you will betray. The curse had begun. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Old Gods. The dawn broke over Vargfjell like a blade slicing through fog, its pale light doing little to warm the chill that gripped Clanraft. The village was a hive of whispers, each voice edged with fear as the news of Sigurd's murder spread. Her body had been moved to the longhouse, laid out on a wooden table, her throat a jagged wound that seemed to mock the clan's strength. The blood moon had faded with the rising sun, but its shadow lingered in the eyes of every man, woman, and child. Eirik stood over Sigurd's body, his hands clenched into fists. The longhouse was quieter now, the clan's earlier frenzy replaced by a heavy silence. Astrid stood beside him, her face pale but resolute, while Bjorn guarded the door, his scarred face set in a grim mask. The air smelled of damp wood and iron, and the fire in the hearth burned low, casting long shadows that danced like specters. Whoever did this, Eirik said, his voice low and dangerous, will answer to Stormfang. He touched the hilt of his sword, the runes etched into its blade catching the firelight. The weapon felt heavier today, as if it carried the weight of Sigurd's death. Astrid's eyes flicked to the broken staff at Sigurd's side, its runes now dull and lifeless. She knew something, she said. She saw the traitor in her visions. That's why they killed her. Eirik wanted to argue, to say it was just a robbery gone wrong, or a feud settled in blood. But the precision of the wound, the absence of struggle, told a different story. This was no accident. Someone had wanted Sigrid, silenced Jarl. Bjorn called from the door, his voice rough. Leif's here, says he's got something to show you. Eirik's stomach tightened at the mention of his cousin's name. Leif had been absent when Sigurd's body was found, and his cryptic words the night before still echoed in Eirik's mind. He nodded to Bjorn, who stepped aside to let Leif enter. The younger man strode in, his fox-like eyes scanning the room. Before settling on Eirik, he carried a leather pouch, its contents rattling softly as he moved. Cousin, Leif said, his tone smooth, but guarded. I was out before dawn, checking the traps near the old cairn, found this bait. He opened the pouch and tipped its contents onto the table beside Sigurd's body. A handful of small, polished bones spilled out, each carved with runes that pulsed. Faintly, like embers in a dying fire, Astrid gasped, stepping back. God's blood, she whispered. Those are seer's bones. Sigurd's Eirik's eyes narrowed. You found these at the cairn. Why were you there, Leif? Leif's smile was thin, almost mocking. The traps, Eirik. We need meat for the winter. Or had you forgotten? The cairn's a good spot for hares. But these, he gestured to the bones. They were scattered in a circle, like someone left them for the gods to see. The clan members nearby began to murmur, their voices a low hum of unease. The old cairn was a sacred place, a mound of stones said to house the spirits of their ancestors. No one went there lightly, not even for traps. Eirik's suspicion deepened, but he kept his face stone cold. And you just happened to find them. Leif's eyes flashed with something, anger, perhaps, or defiance. Careful, cousin. You sound like you're accusing me of something. Before Eirik could respond, Astrid knelt beside the bones, her fingers hovering over them without touching. These runes, they're old, older than Sigrid's staff. They're tied to the curse, aren't they? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Eirik glanced at the statue of Odin at the far end of the longhouse, its one eye seeming to watch them all. The gods were silent, but the bones were not. He could feel their pull, a faint hum in his chest that made his skin prickle. Take them. To the seer's hut, Eirik ordered, his voice steady, despite the unease gnawing at him. We'll deal with them later. Bjorn, gather the warriors. We search the village. Whoever killed Sigrid didn't go far. As the clan dispersed, Eirik caught Leif's arm before he could leave. Stay close, cousin, he said, his grip firm. We'll need every blade if this curse is what Sigrid claimed. Leif's smile returned, sharp as a knife. Of course, Jarl. I'm always loyal to the clan. The words sounded hollow, but Eirik let him go. There was no proof, not yet. But the bones, the cairn, Leif's absence, it all pointed to something Eirik couldn't ignore. The village was a maze of timber huts and narrow paths, nestled between the cliffs and the sea. As Eirik and his warriors searched, the wind carried whispers of the old gods, or so it seemed. Every creak of a door, every rustle of leaves, felt like a warning. The clan was on edge, their eyes darting to shadows, as if expecting the curse to take form and strike. Astrid joined Eirik near the shore, where the waves roared against the rocks. She carried her dagger openly now, its blade catching the weak sunlight. The bones, she said, her voice low. They're not just Sigrid's tools, they're part of the curse. I can feel it. Eirik frowned. You're starting to sound like her. Maybe she was right, Astrid shot back. You saw those runes. They weren't carved by any mortal hand. And Leif finding them at the cairn, it's too convenient. Eirik wanted to argue, to keep the clan's unity intact, but doubt gnawed at him. He thought of their father, of the raid that had taken him. The whispers of betrayal had never been proven, but they'd lingered, poisoning the clan's trust. Now, with Sigrid dead and the blood moon's curse awake, those whispers felt like screams. They continued the search, moving from hut to hut, questioning every member of the clan. No one had seen anything, or so they claimed. But Eirik noticed the way their eyes avoided his, the way their hands fidgeted. Fear was a blade that cut both ways, and the clan was bleeding. By midday, they reached the seer's hut, a small, crooked structure at the edge of the village. Its walls were covered in runes, some faded, others freshly carved. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and ash. Sigrid's belongings were scattered bowls of dried roots, a loom half finished with a tapestry of ravens, and a small altar to Freya, adorned with seashells and feathers. Astrid knelt by the altar, her fingers tracing the runes on its edge. These are different, she said. They're warnings. Look, she pointed to a series of jagged symbols. There, lines sharp and uneven. They speak of a shadow that walks among us, a traitor who carries the clan's blood. Eirik's heart sank. Enough, Astrid. We can't tear ourselves apart chasing shadows. Then what do we do? She demanded, standing to face him. Sigrid's dead. The bones are at the cairn, and the curse is here. You can't lead by ignoring it. Eirik's temper flared, but before he could speak, a shout came from outside. Bjorn burst into the hut, his face flushed. Jarl, you need to see this. At the cairn. They followed him, running through the village to the old cairn, a mound of stones perched on a hill overlooking the fjord. The air grew colder as they approached, the wind carrying a low, eerie hum that made Eirik's skin crawl. The cairn was ancient, its stones worn smooth by time, but something was wrong. The ground around it was disturbed. The earth churned, as if clawed by some great beast. In the center of the cairn, a new stone had been placed, its surface smeared with blood. Runes were carved into it, glowing faintly like the bones Leif had found. Eirik knelt beside it, his breath catching as he recognized one of the symbols, the mark of Hrafn, their clan's sigil, but inverted, twisted into something profane. This wasn't here yesterday, Bjorn said, his voice tight. Someone did this last night. Astrid's eyes blazed. Leif was here. He admitted it. Eirik stood, his hand on Stormfang. Find him, he ordered. Now, the warriors spread out, searching the woods and cliffs, but Leif was gone. His hut was empty, his weapons missing. The clan gathered at the cairn, their fear now a palpable thing, like a storm about to break. Eirik felt their eyes on him, waiting for him to lead, to make sense of the chaos. He climbed onto the cairn, facing the clan. Listen to me, he said, his voice carrying over the wind. Sigrid is dead, and the curse is real. But we are Clan Harft. We do not cower. We do not break. Whoever did this, whoever betrays us, will face our wrath. We'll find them, and we'll end this. The clan roared in response, their fear turning to anger. But Eirik's heart was heavy. He looked at Astrid, who stood at the edge of the crowd, her face unreadable. He wanted to believe in her, in the clan, but the runes on the stone burned in his mind. A traitor who carries the clan's blood. Leif was his cousin, his kin. But so was Astrid. As the clan dispersed, Eirik lingered at the cairn, the blood-smeared stone seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The whispers of the old gods were louder, now, carried on the wind, and they spoke of betrayal. He gripped Stormfang, its runes warm under his touch, and made a silent vow. He would find the traitor, no matter the cost. But deep in his heart, a shadow grew of fear that the traitor might be closer than he could bear to admit. Chapter 3. The traitor's blade. The sun hung low over Vargfjell, its light a feeble glow against the gray clouds that smothered the sky. The village buzzed with a restless energy, like a wolf pack scenting blood. Sigrid's murder, and the blood-smeared stone at the cairn had shattered the clan's fragile unity, and now every glance was laced with suspicion. Eirik stood at the center of the village, his cloak snapping in the wind, Stormfang sheathed at his side. The runes on the sword seemed to hum faintly, a reminder of the curse that loomed over them all. Astrid was at the forge, sharpening her dagger with a rhythm that matched the clan's unease. Her green eyes flicked up as Eirik approached, her expression hard. "Any sign of Leif?" she asked, her voice low, to avoid the ears of passing warriors. Eirik shook his head. "He's vanished. His tracks lead into the forest, but they stop at the river. Either he's better at hiding than I thought, or..." He didn't finish the sentence. The alternative was too strange, too tied to the whispers of the curse, or... "The gods took him," Astrid said, her tone half mocking, half serious. She set the whetstone aside and tested the blade's edge with her thumb. "If he's the traitor, he's not foolish enough to stay close. But if he's not..." She trailed off, her gaze drifting to the cairn in the distance. Eirik followed, her gaze, the memory of the inverted Hrafn sigil burning in his mind. "We can't hunt shadows forever," he said. "The clan's ready to tear itself apart. We need answers, not more questions." "Then let's go to the cairn," Astrid said, standing. "Those runes, the bones there, the key. Sigrid knew something, and someone killed her to keep it hidden." Eirik hesitated. The cairn was sacred, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. As Jarl he'd been taught to respect it, not disturb it. But Astrid was right. Sigrid's death and the bones Leif found were no coincidence. If the curse was real, its roots lay there. Fine, he said, but we go alone. The clan's too on edge for a crowd. They set out as the sun dipped below the cliffs, casting long shadows over the path to the cairn. The forest was quiet, too quiet, the usual chatter of birds replaced by an eerie stillness. Eirik's hand rested on Stormfang, its weight a comfort against the growing sense of dread. Astrid walked beside him, her dagger drawn, her eyes scanning the trees. "You think Leif's the traitor?" Eirik said, breaking the silence. It wasn't a question. Astrid's jaw tightened. "He's always wanted what you have, Eirik. The Jarl's seat. The clan's respect. You saw his face last night. He's hiding something." Eirik didn't argue. Leif's ambition had always been a thorn between them, but accusing him without proof risked splitting the clan further. "If he's guilty, I'll deal with him," Eirik said. "But we need evidence, not dreams." Astrid snorted. "Dreams are all we have left, brother." The cairn loomed ahead, its stone stark against the twilight. The blood-smeared stone still stood at its center, the runes glowing faintly, as if alive. Eirik knelt beside it, tracing the inverted Herfin sigil with his finger. The stone was cold, unnaturally so, and the air around it hummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. "Look at this," Astrid said, crouching nearby. She brushed dirt from the ground, revealing a faint trail of dried blood leading away from the cairn, toward the cliffs. "This wasn't here this morning." Eirik's heart quickened. "Sigrid's blood, or someone else's," Astrid said, her voice grim. She followed the trail, her steps careful, until it vanished at the edge of a steep drop, overlooking the sea. The waves below crashed violently, their foam white as bone. "No one could survive that fall," Eirik said, peering over the edge. The rocks below were jagged, merciless. "If Leif came this way, then he's either dead or cleverer than we thought," Astrid finished. She turned back to the cairn, her eyes narrowing. "But this blood, it's a message. The traitor's playing with us." Before Eirik could respond, a low growl echoed from the forest. He spun, Stormfang drawn in an instant, his eyes scanning the trees. Astrid raised her dagger, her body tense. The growl came again, deeper, more animal than human, and the air grew colder, the wind carrying a scent of decay. "Eirik," Astrid whispered, her voice tight. "Something's here." The shadows moved, coalescing into a shape that was neither man nor beast. It was tall, its form shrouded in mist, its eyes glowing like embers under the blood moon's lingering curse. Eirik's blood ran cold. He'd heard tales of Draugr, the restless dead, but he'd never believed them. Not until now. "Stay behind me," he said, stepping forward, Stormfang raised. The blade's runes flared, casting a faint light that pushed back the mist. The creature hissed. Its voice a rasp of ancient words that Eirik couldn't understand, but felt in his bones. Astrid didn't listen. She darted to the side, her dagger flashing as she lunged at the creature. It moved faster, its clawed hand swiping at her. She ducked, rolling across the ground, and came up with a snarl. "It's not real," she shouted. "It's the curse." Eirik swung Stormfang, the blade slicing through the mist. The creature howled, its form flickering, but it didn't fall. Instead, it spoke, its voice a chorus of whispers that clawed at Eirik's mind. "Blood for blood," it said. "The traitor walks among you." The words hit Eirik like a blow. He staggered, his vision blurring as images flooded his mind. His father's face, bloodied and broken, a shadowed figure standing over him. The raid, the betrayal, the curse. It was all connected. Astrid grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Eirik, focus. It's trying to break you." He shook off the vision, his grip tightening on Stormfang. The creature lunged, its claws raking the air. But Eirik was ready. He drove the sword into its chest, the runes blazing as the blade bit deep. The creature screamed, a sound that shook the stones of the cairn, and dissolved into mist, leaving only a faint echo of its words. The forest was silent again, the air heavy with the scent of salt and blood. Eirik's chest heaved, his hands trembling. Astrid was at his side, her dagger still raised, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eirik didn't answer. He looked at Stormfang. Its runes now dull, as if the blade had exhausted its power. "The curse," he said finally. "It's not just a story." They returned to the cairn, the blood trail and the glowing runes, a stark reminder of the danger they faced. Eirik knelt by the stone again, his mind racing. The creature's words, the visions, they pointed to the past, to his father's death, but they also pointed to the present. The traitor was here now, and they were running out of time. "We need to find Leif," Eirik said, standing. "If he's alive, he knows something." Astrid nodded, but her eyes were on the cairn. "And if he's not, then we're fighting something bigger than one man." They returned to the village as night fell, the stars hidden by clouds. The clan was gathered in the longhouse, their faces pale and drawn. Bjorn met them at the door, his scar twisting. As he frowned, "No sign of Leif," he said. "But we found something else." In his hut, he led them to Leif's small dwelling, its walls bare except for a single shield hung above the hearth. Bjorn pointed to a loose floorboard, pried open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a dagger, its blade etched with the same inverted raft sigil as the stone at the cairn. The metal was stained with dried blood. Eirik's heart sank. "This is Sigrid's blood," he said, his voice hollow. Astrid's face hardened. "Leif, we don't know that," Eirik said, but the words felt weak. The evidence was piling up, each piece sharper than the last. He picked up the dagger, its weight unfamiliar, wrong. The runes seemed to pulse under his touch, whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. The clan's murmurs grew louder, their fear turning to anger. "Leif's the traitor," someone shouted. "He killed Sigrid." Eirik raised a hand, silencing them. "No one moves until we know the truth," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his title. "We hunt Leif, but we do it my way. Blood is spilled without proof." The clan grumbled but obeyed, their trust in Eirik fraying at the edges. He turned to Astrid, lowering his voice. "We go after him tonight. You, me, and Bjorn. No one else." Astrid nodded, her eyes burning with determination. But as they left the hut, Eirik couldn't shake the feeling that the dagger wasn't the whole truth. The creature at the cairn, the visions, the runes, they spoke of something deeper, something that went beyond Leif's ambition. As they prepared to track Leif into the forest, a scream echoed from the cliffs. The clan rushed outside, Eirik at the lead, to find a young warrior named Torvald slumped against a rock, his chest torn open as if by claws. His eyes were wide, frozen in terror, and in his hand was a scrap of cloth black, woven with raven feathers, just like Eirik's cloak. The clan gasped, their eyes turning to their jarl. Eirik felt their suspicion like a blade at his throat. He looked at Astrid, whose face was a mask of shock, and then at the cloth in Torvald's hand. It was his, torn from his cloak during the fight at the cairn. "Eirik," Astrid whispered, her voice trembling. "What's happening?" He didn't answer. The whispers of the old gods were louder now, and they spoke of a traitor whose blood ran closer than he'd ever feared. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Longhouse. The Longhouse was a fortress of shadows, its walls heavy with the weight of fear and suspicion. The fire in the hearth burned low, casting flickering light across the faces of Clan Herfin, who sat in uneasy clusters, their whispers sharp as blades. Torvald's body had been brought inside, laid beside Sigrid's, his torn chest a grim reminder of the curse's reach. The scrap of Eirik's cloak, clutched in the dead warrior's hand, lay on the table like an accusation, its raven feathers glinting in the firelight. Eirik stood at the head of the hall, his broad frame rigid, Stormfang sheathed, but ever present. At his side, the clan's eyes bored into him, some with fear, others with doubt. The discovery of the cloak had fractured their trust, and Eirik felt it like a crack in the ice beneath his feet. Astrid stood nearby, her dagger sheathed but her hand hovering close, her green eyes darting between Eirik and the crowd. Bjorn guarded the door, his scarred face unreadable, but even he seemed to watch Eirik with a new wariness. "Speak, Jarl," called a voice from the crowd. It was Gudrun, an elder with a voice like gravel and a gaze that could cut stone. "That cloth is yours. Torvald's blood is on your hands." The accusation hit like a warhammer. Murmurs rippled through the clan, growing louder, more hostile. Eirik's hand twitched toward Stormfang, but he forced it still. Losing his temper now would only deepen the divide. "The cloth is mine," Eirik said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "Torn from my cloak at the cairn, when Astrid and I faced something, not human, not alive. The curse is real, and it's turning us against each other." The clan's murmurs grew sharper, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Gudrun stepped forward, her white braids swaying. "And what of Leif? You send us to hunt him? But now Torvald dead, and your cloak is in his hand. Are you protecting your cousin, or hiding your own guilt?" Eirik's jaw clenched. He wanted to shout, to demand their loyalty, but the weight of their stares held him back. He glanced at Astrid, hoping for her fire to bolster him, but her expression was guarded, her eyes searching his face as if she, too, harbored doubts. "Enough," Astrid snapped, stepping forward. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Eirik fought that thing at the cairn. I was there. It was no man, no traitor. It was the curse, playing us like pieces on a taffleboard. You want to point fingers? Look at yourselves. Who else was out there last night? Who's hiding what?" The clan fell silent, her words a spark in dry tinder. Eirik felt a surge of gratitude for his sister, but it was tempered by unease. Her defense was fierce, but her glance at him lingered, too long, as if she were weighing his innocence. Bjorn spoke from the door, his voice a low rumble. "Jarl, we found tracks near Torvald's body, leading to the cliffs, same as the blood trail from the cairn. Whoever or whatever did this is still out there." Eirik seized the chance to shift focus. "Then we hunt," he said. "Bjorn, pick 5 warriors. We track the trail at first light. No one moves alone tonight. The curse wants us divided. We stay together." The clan grumbled, but obeyed, their fear outweighing their doubts for now. As they dispersed to their tasks, Eirik pulled Astrid aside, his voice low. "You believe me, don't you? About the cairn, the creature?" Astrid's eyes softened, but only slightly. "I believe you fought something, but that cloth, Eirik, it's too much. The clan's ready to turn on you, on us. Then help me find the truth," he said, his grip tightening on her arm. "We need to know what Sigrid knew. Her hut, her runes, there's something we're missing." Astrid nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Tonight, then, after the clan sleeps." The night settled over Vargfjell like a shroud, the wind howling through the cliffs with a voice that seemed to mock the clan's resolve. Eirik and Astrid slipped out of the longhouse, moving silently through the village to Sigrid's hut. The air was thick with the scent of salt and pine, and the stars were hidden, as if the gods themselves turned their backs. Inside the hut, the faint glow of a single candle illuminated the chaos of Sigrid's life herbs scattered across the floor, a half-finished tapestry of ravens torn from its loom, and the altar to Freya, its seashells now cracked and scattered. Astrid knelt by the altar, her fingers tracing the runes etched into its base. "These are different," she said, her voice hushed. "They're not warnings, they're a story. Look." She pointed to a sequence of runes, their lines deep, and precise. They speak of the first blood moon, when the curse was born. A betrayal within the clan, a pact with something dark. Eirik crouched beside her, his eyes narrowing. What kind of pact? Astrid's voice was barely a whisper. The runes don't say exactly, but it was sealed with blood, and it bound the clan to the moon. Every 30 years, it demands a sacrifice, a traitor to break the cycle, or the clan falls. Eirik's mind raced, the creature's words at the cairn, echoing, blood for blood. The traitor walks among you. Sigurd knew this, he said. That's why she was killed. Astrid nodded, her face pale. And the bones Leif found, the dagger in his hut, they're part of it. But why would he leave them for us to find? Before Eirik could answer, a shadow moved outside the hut, quick and silent. He drew Stormfang, its runes flaring briefly, and stepped toward the door. Astrid followed, her dagger ready. They slipped outside, the night air biting at their skin. The village was quiet, but the cliffs loomed in the distance, their shadows shifting as if alive. There, Astrid whispered, pointing to a figure moving toward the shore. It was cloaked, its movements too deliberate to be innocent. Eirik's heart pounded as he recognized the gate leaf. They followed, keeping to the shadows, their steps muffled by the soft earth. Leif moved with purpose, heading for a small cave hidden among the rocks, its entrance barely visible in the dark. Eirik signaled for Astrid to stay back, but she ignored him, her eyes blazing with determination. Inside the cave, the air was damp and heavy, the walls slick with moss. A faint glow emanated from deeper within, pulsing like a heartbeat. Eirik's grip on Stormfang tightened as they crept forward. The sound of dripping water mingling with a low, rhythmic chant. Leif stood at the center of the cave, his back to them, before a crude altar of stacked stones. The glow came from a circle of runes carved into the floor, their light casting eerie shadows across his face. He held the dagger from his hut, its blade still stained with Sigurd's blood. And he was muttering words Eirik couldn't understand, words that felt wrong, like a wound in the air. Leif, Eirik roared, stepping into the light. Stormfang gleamed, its runes blazing. Step away from that altar. Leif turned, his face calm, almost amused. Cousin, he said, his voice smooth. You're late. The gods are already listening. Astrid lunged, her dagger aimed at Leif's heart, but he sidestepped with unnatural speed, grabbing her wrist and twisting until she dropped the blade. Eirik charged, Stormfang swinging, but Leif raised the bloodied dagger, and the air shimmered. A force pushed Eirik back, like a gust of wind laced with ice. This isn't what you think, Leif said, his eyes glinting with something darker than ambition. The curse chose me, Eirik. It's in our blood. One of us has to break it, and it won't be you. Eirik's vision blurred, the cave spinning as the runes on the floor flared brighter. Images flooded his mind, his father's death, a shadowed figure with Leif's face, blood pooling on the snow. The chant grew louder, the air thick with the scent of decay. Astrid struggled in Leif's grip, her face contorted with rage. Let her go, Eirik shouted, forcing himself forward against the invisible barrier. Stormfang hummed in his hand, its runes pulsing in time with the altar's glow. Leif laughed, a cold, hollow sound. You don't understand, cousin. The curse demands a traitor. Sigrid tried to stop it, so I silenced her. Torvald saw too much, so he died. But you, he stepped closer, the dagger raised. You're the key, your blood, your blade. Before Eirik could react, the cave shook, the ground cracking beneath their feet. The runes blazed, and a shadow rose from the altar, not the creature from the cairn, but something worse, its form a writhing mass of mist and bone. Its voice was a chorus of screams, speaking words that tore at Eirik's mind. The oath is broken, blood for blood. Astrid broke free, tackling Leif to the ground. The dagger skittered across the floor, its runes fading. Eirik swung Stormfang, aiming for the shadow, but it dissolved, its laughter echoing as the cave grew dark. Leif scrambled to his feet, his eyes wild. "You can't stop it," he shouted, bolting for the cave's entrance. Eirik chased him, Astrid at his side, but Leif was fast, disappearing into the night. The runes on the altar were dull now, the air still. Eirik's chest heaved, his mind reeling. Leif's words, the shadow's voice, the visions, they all pointed to a truth he wasn't ready to face. "We have to tell the clan," Astrid said, her voice shaking. "Leif's the traitor," he admitted it. Eirik nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. "Leif's words, your blood?" Your blade felt like a puzzle half solved. He looked at Stormfang, its runes still faintly glowing, and felt a chill. The sword had been his father's, tied to the clan's bloodline, tied to the curse. They returned to the longhouse, the clan waiting in tense silence. Eirik held up the bloody dagger, its inverted sigil gleaming. "Leif is the traitor," he said, his voice heavy. "He killed Sigrid Torvald. He's fled, but we'll find him." The clan roared, their anger a living thing, but Eirik felt no triumph. Astrid stood beside him, her face pale, her eyes on the dagger. As the clan dispersed to prepare for the hunt, she leaned close, her voice a whisper. "Eirik," she said, "what if Leif's not the only one the curse has chosen?" He didn't answer, but the question hung between them, sharp as the traitor's blade. Chapter 5. Curse of the Bloodline. The wind tore through Vargfjell, sharp as a blade, carrying the scent of salt, and something darker, something ancient and hungry. The longhouse stood like a wounded beast, its timbers creaking under the weight of the clan's fear. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and suspicion, the fire casting long shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. Eirik stood at the head of the hall, the bloody dagger from Leif's cave lying on the table. Before him, its inverted Hoffen sigil, a silent accusation. The clan's eyes were on him, their anger a palpable force. But beneath it lay a deeper dread. The curse was no longer a story, but a predator among them. Astrid stood at his side, her green eyes burning with resolve, though Eirik could see the strain in her tightened jaw. Bjorn, ever loyal, loomed near the door, his scarred face set in a grim line. The clan's warriors were armed, their axes and swords gleaming in the firelight, ready to hunt Leif, the traitor who had admitted to Sigrid's murder and Torvald's death. But Eirik's heart was heavy, Astrid's question from the cave echoing in his mind. What if Leif's not the only one the curse has chosen? "We move at dawn," Eirik said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Leif's tracks lead to the forest. We'll find him, and he'll answer for his crimes. But we stay together. The curse thrives on division. We give it no ground." The clan nodded, their faces a mix of determination and fear. Gudrun the elder stepped forward, her white braids dark against her dark furs. "And what of you, Jarl?" she asked, her voice sharp. "That cloth in Torvald's hand was yours. How do we know you're not part of this?" Eirik's hand tightened on Stormfang's hilt, the sword's runes pulsing faintly. "I fought the creature at the cairn," he said, his tone steady but cold. "I stood against it with Astrid. If you doubt me, Gudrun, say it plainly." She held his gaze, unyielding, but said nothing more. The clan shifted uneasily, their trust in their Jarl fraying like a worn rope. Eirik felt Astrid's hand on his arm, a silent reassurance, but even her touch carried a weight of doubt. He couldn't blame her not after the cave, not after Leif's words about his blood, his blade. As the clan dispersed to prepare for the hunt, Eirik pulled Bjorn aside. "Keep an eye on the elders," he said quietly. "Gudrun's stirring trouble, and we can't afford a split now." Bjorn nodded, his scar twisting as he frowned. "And Astrid? She's loyal, but she's scared, Eirik, scared for you." Eirik's chest tightened. "She's my sister. She'll stand with me." Bjorn's eyes softened, but he said nothing, turning to organize the warriors. Eirik watched him go, then turned to Astrid, who was examining the dagger on the table. "What do you see?" he asked. She traced the inverted sigil with her finger, her brow furrowed. "These runes, they're not just Hafen's mark. They're older, tied to the blood moon. Sigrid's tapestry mentioned a pact, a betrayal that started this. I think Leif knows more than he said." "Then we find him," Eirik said, his voice firm, "and we end this." The night passed in a restless haze, the clan sleeping fitfully under the longhouse's roof. Eirik didn't sleep, his mind tangled with visions of the cave, the shadow, Leif's laughter, the runes that burned like fire. When dawn broke, gray and cold, he led a small group into the forest. Astrid, Bjorn, and 3 warriors: Hakon, a burly axeman; Ingrid, a sharp-eyed archer; and Sven, a young warrior, eager to prove himself. The air was thick with mist, the trees looming like silent sentinels. Leif's tracks were faint, washed out by the night's wind, but Ingrid's keen eyes picked them up near the river. "He crossed here," she said, pointing to scuffed moss on the bank, "but the trail's strange. It's like he vanished mid-step." Eirik's skin prickled. He remembered the tracks at the cliffs, how they'd stopped abruptly. "Keep moving," he said. "He's not a ghost, not yet." The forest grew denser, the air colder, as if the curse itself clung to the trees. The warriors moved silently, their weapons drawn, their breaths visible in the chill. Astrid stayed close to Eirik, her dagger gleaming, her eyes scanning the shadows. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "It's watching us." Eirik nodded, his hand on Stormfang. The sword felt heavier, its runes warm under his touch. He wanted to dismiss Astrid's words, but the forest felt alive, its silence a predator's patience. The memory of the creature at the cairn, the shadow in the cave, gnawed at him. Leif had called him the key, his blood, his blade, but why? They reached a clearing, the ground soft with pine needles, and Ingrid stopped, her bow raised. "Blood," she said, pointing to a dark stain on a tree trunk. It was fresh, still glistening, and beside it was a single raven feather, pinned to the bark with a splinter of bone. Astrid's breath caught. "That's not Leif's work," she said. "It's the curse." Before Eirik could respond, a low growl rumbled through the clearing, the same unearthly sound from the cairn. The warriors formed a circle, weapons ready, as the mist thickened, curling around them like a living thing. Eirik's heart pounded, Stormfang's runes flaring as he raised the blade. The creature emerged from the mist, its form more solid now, tall, gaunt, with limbs that bent unnaturally and eyes that burned like coals. Its face was a mockery of humanity, twisted and hollow, and it carried a blade of bone, etched with runes that mirrored the daggers. The clan froze, their courage faltering, but Eirik stepped forward, Stormfang steady in his hand. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice a challenge to the gods themselves. The creature hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers. "Blood of Hraf," it said. "The oath demands you." Eirik swung Stormfang, the blade slicing through the creature's arm. It howled, but the wound closed, mist knitting it shut. Hack charged, his axe swinging, but the creature caught the blade midair, snapping it like a twig. Ingrid loosed an arrow, but it passed through the creature as if it were smoke. Astrid grabbed Eirik's arm. "It's not real," she shouted. "It's the curse, feeding on us." Sven, young and reckless, lunged with his sword, but the creature was faster. Its bone blade slashed across his chest, and he fell, blood pooling beneath him. The clan screamed, their formation breaking, but Eirik roared, "Hold your ground." He swung Stormfang again, the runes blazing brighter, and this time the blade bit deeper, drawing a shriek from the creature. It staggered, its form flickering, and for a moment, Eirik saw something in its eyes, not just malice, but recognition. It knew him. Astrid threw her dagger, the blade embedding in the creature's chest. It screamed, dissolving into mist, leaving only the bone blade behind, its runes fading. The clearing was silent again, but Sven lay dead, his eyes wide with Terror. Eirik knelt beside him, guilt twisting in his gut. "We should have been faster," he said, his voice hoarse. Ingrid's face was pale, her bow trembling in her hands. "That thing? It spoke your name, Jarl. It wanted you." Eirik didn't answer. He picked up the bone blade, its weight wrong, like holding a piece of the curse itself. The runes were faint now, but they matched those on the dagger. He felt Astrid's eyes on him, her question from the cave echoing louder. What if Leif's not the only one? They buried Sven in the clearing, a hasty rite under the watchful trees. The clan was shaken, their trust in Eirik crumbling further. As they returned to the village, the bone blade wrapped in cloth, Eirik felt the weight of their stares. Hakon and Ingrid said nothing, but their silence was louder than words. In the longhouse, the clan gathered, their faces grim. Eirik placed the bone blade beside the dagger, the two weapons a stark reminder of the curse's power. "We fought it," he said, addressing the clan. "Leif's out there, and so is this thing. We hunt until we find him, until we end this." Gudrun stood, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "And what if you're leading us to ruin, Jarl? That creature knew you, your cloak, your blood, it's all tied to this." The clan's murmurs grew hostile, and Eirik felt the ground shift beneath him. Before he could respond, Astrid stepped forward, her voice fierce. "Enough. Eirik fought for us, risked his life. You want to blame him? Show me proof, not whispers." The clan fell silent, but the tension remained, a blade poised to strike. As they dispersed, Eirik pulled Astrid aside. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. "But they're not wrong to doubt me." Astrid's eyes searched his. "What did Leif mean, Eirik? About your blood, your blade?" He didn't answer, his gaze falling to Stormfang. The sword had been his father's, passed down through generations. Its runes a mystery even Sigrid couldn't fully unravel. But now, with the bone blade, the dagger, the creature's words, he felt a truth forming, a truth he wasn't ready to face. That night, as the clan slept, Eirik sat by the fire, Stormfang across his lap. The runes glowed faintly, and for the first time, he noticed a pattern, a sequence that matched the altar in the cave. He traced them, his fingers trembling, and a vision hit him, his father, bloodied, standing before the cairn, speaking words of a pact, a betrayal, a curse born of Herfin blood. Eirik's heart stopped. The curse wasn't just Leif's doing. It was their bloodline, their legacy, and Stormfang was at its heart. He looked at Astrid, sleeping nearby, and felt a chill. She was his sister, his kin. But the curse demanded blood, and the traitor could be anyone, even her. Chapter 6. The Seer's Prophecy. The longhouse was a tomb of flickering shadows, the fire's embers casting a dim glow over the sleeping forms of Clan Harfin. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and fear, the weight of the curse pressing down like a storm about to break. Eirik sat alone by the hearth, Stormfang across his lap, its runes pulsing faintly in the dark. The vision from the night before, of his father, bloodied, and speaking of a pact, clung to him like damp rot. The sword, the curse, his bloodline, they were entwined, and the truth was a blade at his throat. Astrid slept nearby, her face softened in repose, but Eirik's eyes lingered on her with a mix of love and dread. She was his sister, his fiercest ally, but the curse's whispers, "The traitor walks among you," had planted a seed of doubt he couldn't uproot. Leif was gone, a traitor by his own admission, but the bone blade, the creature's words, and now the vision of their father suggested something deeper, something tied to the heart of Clan Hrafn. The clan was fracturing. Sven's death in the forest had shaken their resolve, and Gudrun's accusations had turned whispers into shouts. Eirik knew he had to act, to find answers before the clan turned on itself on him. Sigrid's hut held the key, he was sure of it. Her runes, her tapestry, her prophecy, they were pieces of a puzzle only she had understood. And now, with her gone, Eirik had to piece it together before the curse claimed more lives. He stood, sheathing Stormfang, and nudged Astrid awake. Her eyes snapped open, sharp and alert, her hand reaching for her dagger. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice thick with sleep. "Sigrid's hut," Eirik said, keeping his voice low. "We need to know what she knew. Her prophecy, the runes, there's something we missed." Astrid nodded, rising without hesitation. "The clan's watching you, Eirik. If we go now, they'll think you're hiding something. Let them think what they want," he said, his tone hard. "We're running out of time." They slipped out of the longhouse, the village shrouded in pre-dawn mist. The air was cold, biting at their skin, and the cliffs loomed like silent judges. Hut stood at the edge of Vargfjell, its walls etched with runes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and ash, the remnants of Sigrid's life scattered like bones after a feast. Astrid lit a candle, its flame casting eerie shadows across the tapestry of ravens, now torn and frayed. Eirik knelt by the altar to Freya, his fingers tracing the runes Astrid had found before. "You said these told a story," he said. "A pact, a betrayal. Can you read more?" Astrid crouched beside him, her brow furrowed as she studied the runes. "They're fragmented," she said, her voice low. "But they speak of the first blood moon, when the curse was born. A Hrefn warrior, ancestor made a pact with a god. Not Odin, not Freya, something older, something hungry." Eirik's skin prickled. "What kind of pact?" Astrid's fingers hesitated over a rune shaped like a twisted claw. "Blood for power. The warrior offered his kin's blood to seal it, betraying his own. The god granted strength to the clan, but the price was the curse. Every 30 years, the blood moon demands a traitor's blood to break it tore. It takes the clan instead." Eirik's heart sank. The vision of his father, standing before the cairn, flashed in his mind. Our father, he knew this, didn't he? Astrid's eyes met his, dark with understanding. "He died in that raid, Eirik. Everyone said it was betrayal. What if he was trying to break the curse?" Before Eirik could respond, a faint scratching came from the hut's walls, like claws on wood. He drew Stormfang, its runes flaring, and stepped toward the door. Astrid grabbed her dagger, her body tense. The scratching grew louder, rhythmic, almost deliberate, and the air grew colder. The candle's flame flickering, as if caught in a draft. "Show yourself," Eirik shouted, his voice echoing in the small hut. The scratching stopped, replaced by a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Blood of Hraf," it said, the words slithering into Eirik's mind. "The seer's prophecy lives." Astrid's face paled, but she held her dagger steady. "It's her," she whispered. "See." The air shimmered, and a figure formed in the shadows, a woman, her white hair wild, her throat a jagged wound. It was Sigrid, or a shadow of her, her eyes glowing with the same ember-like light as the creature at the cairn. Eirik's breath caught Stormfang trembling in his hand. "You seek the truth," the shadow Sigrid rasped, her voice a chorus of whispers. "The prophecy is written in blood. The traitor is bound to the blade to the bloodline. Find the oath, or all will fall." Eirik stepped forward, his heart pounding. "What oath? Who's the traitor?" The shadow's eyes locked on his, and for a moment, he saw his father's face superimposed over hers, bloodied and broken. "The oath of the first," she said. "Sealed in the cairn, broken by betrayal. The blade knows, the blood knows." The figure dissolved, the air warming as the candle's flame steadied. Eirik's knees buckled, and he caught himself on the altar, Stormfang clattering to the floor. Astrid grabbed his arm, her face pale but fierce. "She's telling us to look at Stormfang," she said. "The runes, Eirik, they're the key." He picked up the sword, its runes glowing brighter now, as if awakened by Sigrid's words. He traced them, his fingers trembling, and felt a hum in his chest. like a heartbeat not his own. The runes were ancient, their shapes twisting into patterns that matched the cairn's stone, the dagger, the bone blade. These aren't just Hrafin's mark, he said, his voice hoarse. They're a map. To the oath. Astrid's eyes widened. The cairn. We need to go back. They left the hut, the village still asleep under the gray dawn. The cairn loomed in the distance, its stones stark against the mist. Eirik's mind raced. Sigurd's words the blade knows, the blood knows coing with the vision of his father. The clan was on the edge of rebellion, and Leif was still out there, a traitor by his own admission. But the curse was bigger than Leif, bigger than any one man. It was their bloodline, their legacy, and Eirik was at its heart. They reached the cairn as the sun broke through the clouds. Its light weak, but enough to illuminate the blood-smeared stone. Eirik knelt, Stormfang in one hand, the bone blade in the other. The runes on both matched, their glow intensifying as he brought them close. Astrid watched, her dagger ready, her eyes scanning the surrounding trees. Eirik, she said, her voice tense. The clan's coming. He turned to see. A group approaching Bjorn, Hakon, Ingrid, and a dozen others, their faces grim. Gudrun was with them, her white braids swaying, her eyes sharp with accusation. Jarl, she called, her voice carrying over the wind. You sneak off in the night, to the seer's hut, the cairn. What are you hiding? Eirik stood, Stormfang at his side. I'm finding answers, he said, his tone hard. Sigurd's prophecy, the runes they point to the curse's origin. The cairn holds the oath that started this. Gudrun's eyes narrowed. And what of Leif? You protect him, even now. Leif's a traitor, Eirik said, his voice steady. But the curse is bigger than him. It's in our blood, Gudrun, our ancestors' pact. We need to break it, or we all die. The clan murmured, their anger tempered by fear. Bjorn stepped forward, his scar twisting as he spoke. We trust you, Jarl, but the clan's scared. Sven's death. Torvald Sigurd sits too much. Show us something, or they'll turn. Eirik nodded, turning back to the cairn. He placed Stormfang against the blood-smeared stone, the runes aligning with those carved into it. The air hummed, the ground trembling, and a crack split the stone, revealing a hollow within. Inside was a small ancient box, its wood blackened, and etched with runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. Astrid gasped, stepping closer. That's it, she said. The oath. Eirik opened the box, his hands trembling. Inside was a parchment, brittle and stained with blood, its words written in runes that matched Stormfang's. He read aloud, his voice shaking. By blood of Hrafn, I bind this clan to the shadow of the moon. Power for betrayal, strength for sacrifice. The traitor's blood will break the oath, or the clan will fall. The clan fell silent, their faces pale. Eirik's heart pounded as he realized the truth. The curse was tied to his bloodline, to Stormfang, to the betrayal of their ancestor. But the parchment held one more line, its runes jagged and raw. The traitor is the blade's heir. Eirik. Blood ran cold. He was the heir, the Jarl, the one who carried Stormfang. He looked at Astrid, whose face was a mask of shock, and then at the clan, their eyes wide with realization. The curse didn't just demand a traitor, demanded him, before he could speak. A scream tore through the air. From the forest, a figure stumbled. Leif, bloodied and wild-eyed, his cloak torn. Eirik, he shouted, collapsing at the cairn's edge. It's not me, it's you. The curse, it's always been you. The clan erupted, their voices a storm of fear and rage. Eirik raised Stormfang, its runes blazing, and stepped toward Leif, his heart torn between duty and doubt. The seer's prophecy had spoken, and the truth was a blade sharper than any steel. Chapter 7. Betrayal at the feast. The longhouse was a cauldron of tension, its timbers groaning under the weight of the storm outside, and the fear within. The clan had gathered for a feast, a desperate attempt to restore unity after Leif's return. And his chilling accusation? The curse, it's always been you. The words hung over Eirik like a noose, tightening with every suspicious glance from his people. The fire roared in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the tables laden with smoked fish, barley bread, and mead, but the warmth did little to thaw the ice in the clan's hearts. Eirik sat at the head of the hall, Stormfang sheathed at his side, its runes pulsing faintly as if sensing the unrest. Astrid was to his left, her green eyes sharp, her dagger hidden beneath her cloak but ready. Bjorn stood by the door, his scarred face a mask of loyalty, though even he seemed to watch Eirik with a new wariness. Leif sat across the hall, his wounds bandaged, his fox-like eyes glinting with a mix of defiance and fear. The clan had demanded he be bound, but Eirik had refused, insisting on hearing him out. It was a decision he now questioned as the air grew thick with distrust. The parchment from the cairn lay on the table before Eirik, its blood-stained runes, a grim reminder of the curse's demand. The traitor is the blade's heir. He was the heir, the Jarl, the one who carried Fang. The clan's eyes darted to the sword, then to him, their whispers sharp as blades. Gudrun, the elder, sat near Leif, her white braids stark against her dark furs, her gaze a silent accusation. Eat. Drink, Eirik said, raising his horn of mead, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. We are Clan Raft, we face this curse together, not as enemies. The clan raised their horns, but the gesture was hollow, their eyes flickering with doubt. Leif leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. Together, cousin, or do you lead us to ruin? The curse chose you, Eirik, the blade's heir. Sigrid knew, and she died for it. The hall fell silent, the clink of horns and plates stopping as if the air itself held its breath. Eirik's hand tightened on his horn, the mead sloshing. You admitted to killing Sigrid, he said, his tone cold. You fled, Leif, your dagger, your tracks, everything points to you. Leif's smile was sharp, almost feral. I killed her, yes. She was going to name you Eirik. She saw the truth in her bones, in her visions. The curse demands your blood, not mine. The clan erupted, voices rising in a chaotic storm. Some shouted for Leif's head, others for Eirik's. Astrid slammed her horn on the table, her voice cutting through the noise. Enough. Leif's a liar, twisting words to save himself. We found the dagger, the bones, the altar. He's the traitor, not Eirik. Gudrun stood, her voice like gravel. And what of the cloth in Torvald's hand? The creature that knew Eirik's name, the runes that call him the blade's heir. We can't ignore the signs, Astrid. Eirik felt the clan's eyes like a weight, pressing him down. He stood, his hand on Stormfang, its runes flaring briefly. I am your Jarl, he said, his voice a low growl. I've fought for this clan, bled for it. If you think me a traitor, draw your blade and say it to my face. The hall was silent, the challenge hanging heavy. No one moved, but the tension was a living thing, coiling around them. Leif leaned back, his smile fading, but his eyes never left Eirik's. Astrid's hand hovered near her dagger, her body tense, as if ready to defend him or strike. Before anyone could speak, the fire in the hearth flared, its flames turning crimson, casting the hall in an unnatural glow. The air grew cold, the scent of decay filling the room. The clan gasped, some drawing weapons, others clutching amulets to Thor or Freya. Eirik's heart pounded as he recognized the presence, the same malevolent force from the cairn. The came, the forest. A shadow rose from the fire, its form shifting between Sigrid's face and something older, more primal. Its eyes were embers, its voice a chorus of whispers that clawed at Eirik's mind. The oath demands blood, it said. The blade's heir must pay, or all will fall. The clan screamed, some falling to their knees, others backing toward the walls. Eirik drew Stormfang, its runes blazing, and stepped toward the shadow. Name the traitor, he shouted. Speak plainly, or I'll cut you down. The shadow laughed, a sound like breaking bones. The traitor is bound to the blade, to the blood. The oath was sealed in betrayal, and only betrayal will break it. Its eyes locked on Eirik, and for a moment, he saw his father's face, bloodied and pleading, superimposed over the shadow's form. Astrid grabbed his arm, her voice urgent. Eirik, don't listen. It's trying to turn us against you. But the shadow's gaze shifted, settling on Astrid. Blood of Raffen, it whispered. You carry the curse too. Astrid's face paled, her hand dropping from Eirik's arm. The clan's murmurs grew louder, their fear turning to panic. Leif stood, his voice rising over the chaos. You see, it's not just Eirik, it's their bloodline, Eirik, Astrid, their father. The curse is in them all. Eirik spun, Stormfang raised, but Bjorn was faster, stepping between them with his axe drawn. No blood is spilled here, he growled. Not until we know the truth. The shadow laughed again, its form dissolving into the fire, leaving the hall in darkness as the flames died. The clan was in chaos, shouting, shoving, their unity shattered. Eirik's mind reeled, the shadow's words, you carry the curse, two echoing alongside Leif's accusations. He looked at Astrid, whose eyes were wide with fear, not just for him, but for herself. Silence. Eirik roared, his voice shaking the hall. The clan quieted, their eyes on him. We are Clan Harfin. We don't cower before shadows or lies. Leif, you'll answer for your crimes. Astrid, you're with me. We end this curse, no matter the cost. The clan nodded, their fear tempered by his resolve, but the doubt remained, a poison in their veins. As they dispersed, Eirik pulled Astrid aside, his voice low. Did you know? He asked, his eyes searching hers. About the bloodline, about us. Astrid's jaw tightened, her voice barely a whisper. I suspected. Sigrid's runes, her tapestry, they hinted at it, but I didn't want to believe it. Eirik's heart sank. He wanted to trust her, needed to, but the shadow's words gnawed at him. He turned to Leif, who was being restrained by Bjorn and Hakon. You're coming with us, Eirik said, to the cairn. If you know the truth, you'll prove it. Leif's smile was gone, his eyes dark with something Eirik couldn't read. You'll see, cousin, he said. The curse doesn't lie. They left the longhouse at midnight, a small group. Eirik, Astrid, Bjorn, Hakon, Ingrid, and Leif, his hands bound but his stride defiant. The cairn loomed under the starless sky, its stones glowing faintly with the curse's power. The air was thick, the wind carrying whispers that seemed to mock their steps. At the cairn, Eirik placed Stormfang against the blood-smeared stone, its runes aligning with those carved into it. The ground trembled, the air humming with a force that made his skin crawl. Leif watched, his expression unreadable, while Astrid stood close, her dagger drawn. Speak, Eirik said to Leif, his voice hard. What do you know of the oath? Leif's eyes glinted. The oath was made by our ancestor Eirik, a pact with a god of shadow, for power to save the clan. But it demanded betrayal a kin's blood. Your father tried to break it, and he died. Sigrid saw you as the next, the blade's heir. That's why I killed Hurt to protect you. Eirik's blood ran cold. Protect me. You killed Torvald too. Leif shook his head. That wasn't me. The curse took him. It's in you, Eirik. Your blood, your blade. You're the traitor at once. Before Eirik could respond, the cat shook, the stones cracking as a shadow rose. Not Sigrid, not the creature, but a figure cloaked in raven feathers, its face hidden but familiar. Its voice was his father's, broken and raw. Eirik, it said, the blade's heir must choose, betray or be betrayed. The shadow lunged, its claws reaching for Eirik. He swung Stormfang, the runes blazing, but the shadow vanished, its laughter echoing. The clan stumbled back, their weapons raised, but Leif broke free, grabbing the bone blade from the ground and slashing at his bonds. "Stop him," Astrid shouted, lunging, but Leif was fast, disappearing into the forest. Eirik chased in hand, but the shadows seemed to swallow Leif whole. The cairn was silent again, the stones dull, but the weight of the shadow's words remained. Back at the longhouse, the clan was in chaos, their trust in Eirik shattered. Astrid stood by him, but her eyes were haunted. "What if he's right?" she whispered. "What if it's you?" Eirik didn't answer, his hand on Stormfang, its runes warm under his touch. The curse demanded a traitor, and the blade's air was at its heart. As the clan's shouts grew louder, he felt the noose tighten, and the shadow's voice whispered in his mind, "Betray, or be betrayed." Chapter 8. Into the Frost-Bitten Wilds. The frost clung to Vargfjell like a curse, its icy fingers creeping into the bones of Clan Herfin. The longhouse was a fortress of dwindling warmth, its fire barely holding back the chill that seeped through the timbers. Eirik stood at the threshold, Stormfang sheathed at his side, its runes pulsing faintly, as if sensing the storm brewing within and without. The clan's trust was a frayed thread, torn apart by Leif's escape and his damning words. "The cursed, always been you." The shadow's voice at the cairn. Betray, or be betrayed code in Eirik's mind. A blade sharper than any steel. Astrid stood beside him, her cloak pulled tight against the wind, her green eyes hard with determination, but shadowed by doubt. Bjorn Hakon and Ingrid waited nearby, their weapons ready, their faces grim. The clan had demanded Leif's blood, but his flight into the forest had left them with nothing but fear and suspicion. Eirik knew they couldn't wait. The curse was growing stronger, its presence a weight in the air, and Leif's knowledge of the oath was their only lead. "We go now," Eirik said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "Into the wilds. Leif's out there, and he knows something. We find him, we find the truth." Astrid's jaw tightened. "And if he's right, if the curse is you," Eirik met her gaze, his heart heavy, "then we'll know. But I won't let this clan fall to shadows and lies." Bjorn stepped forward, his scar twisting as he spoke. "The wilds are no place for a hunt, Jarl. The frost is cruel, and the forest, it's wrong since the blood moon rose." "I know," Eirik said. "That's why it's just us. Small, fast, quiet. The clan stays here, under Gudrun's watch." The mention of Gudrun made the group stiffen. The elder's accusations had sown discord, and her absence now felt like a reprieve. But Eirik knew her influence lingered, a poison in the clan's veins. He turned to the warriors. "We move as one. No one strays. The curse wants us divided." They set out as the sky darkened, the clouds heavy with the promise of snow. The forest beyond Vargfjell was a labyrinth of twisted pines and frozen streams, its air thick with the scent of decay. Leif's tracks were faint, scuffed by wind and frost, but Ingrid's sharp eyes followed them, her bow drawn as she led the way. Eirik walked beside Astrid, Stormfang's weight, a constant reminder of the curse's claim on him. The bone blade, wrapped in cloth, hung at his belt, its runes silent but heavy with secrets. The wilds were silent, too silent, the usual calls of wolves or owls replaced by a stillness that pressed against Eirik's ears. The trees seemed to watch, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. Astrid's breath was visible in the cold, her dagger gleaming as she scanned the shadows. "It's here," she whispered. "The curse. I can feel it." Eirik nodded, his hand on Stormfang. The sword's runes pulsed, warm under his touch, as if responding to the forest's unease. He wanted to dismiss Astrid's words, to cling to the hope that Leif was the key, but the shadow's voice, the blade's air, gnawed him. His blood, his blade, his father's death, they were all tied to the curse, and the truth was a shadow he couldn't outrun. They followed the tracks to a frozen stream, its surface cracked like a broken shield. Ingrid knelt, brushing away snow, to reveal a smear of blood, dark and fresh. Leif's hurt, she said, her voice low. Or something else is. Hakon gripped his axe, his eyes darting to the trees. This place is cursed. We should turn back. No, Eirik said, his tone hard. We end this now. Leif's close. They pressed on, the forest growing denser, the air colder. The tracks led to a clearing, where the ground was churned, as if by a struggle. In the center stood a crude altar of stones, not unlike the one in the cave, its surface smeared with blood. Runes glowed faintly, matching those on Stormfang and the bone blade. A single raven feather lay atop it, pinned by a splinter of bone. Astrid's breath caught. He's been here, she said. Leif Eirik's heart pounded as he approached. The altar, Stormfang drawn. The runes pulsed in time with his heartbeat, and a vision flashed in his mind: his father, kneeling before a similar altar, blood dripping from his hands as he spoke words of betrayal. Eirik staggered, the sword trembling in his grip. Eirik. Astrid grabbed his arm, her voice urgent. What's wrong? He shook his head, the vision fading but leaving a chill in his bones. The sword, he said, his voice hoarse. It's showing me things. Our father. He made the oath. Before Astrid could respond, a low growl echoed through the clearing, the same guttural sound from the cairn in the forest. The mist thickened, curling around them like a living thing, and the air grew heavy with the scent of decay. Eirik raised Stormfang, its runes blazing, as the warriors formed a circle, weapons ready. The creature emerged from the mist, its form more solid now, its body a twisted blend of bone and shadow. Its eyes burned like embers, and it carried a blade of bone, its runes glowing with malevolent light. Blood of Hrafn, it hissed, its voice a chorus of screams. The oath demands you. Eirik stepped forward, Stormfang steady, despite the fear clawing at his chest. I'm here, he said, his voice a challenge. If it's my blood you want, come take it. The creature lunged, its bone blades slashing through the air. Eirik parried, Stormfang's runes flaring as steel met bone. The impact sent a shock through his arm, but he held his ground, driving the creature back. Astrid darted to the side, her dagger flashing, but the creature swiped at her, its claws grazing her cloak. Hakon swung his axe, but the creature was faster, its blade slicing across his arm. He roared, stumbling, as Ingrid loosed an arrow, only for it to pass through the creature's form. Bjorn charged, his axe a blur, but the creature laughed, its voice shaking the trees. It's not real, Astrid shouted, dodging another swipe. It's the curse, feeding on our fear. Eirik swung Stormfang again, the runes blazing brighter, and this time the blade bit deep, drawing a scream from the creature. Its form flickered, revealing a glimpse of a human face, Leif's, twisted with pain and rage. Eirik froze, the sight shaking him to his core. Leif, he whispered, lowering his blade. The creature laughed, its face shifting back to shadow. All are bound, it said. The traitor's blood is yours. It lunged again, but Eirik was ready, driving into its chest. The runes flared, and the creature dissolved, its scream echoing as the mist cleared. The clearing was silent, the altar's runes fading, but the bone blade remained, its glow pulsing faintly. Hakon clutched his bleeding arm, his face pale. That thing, it looked like Leif. It wasn't him, Eirik said, though doubt gnawed him. He picked up the bone blade, its weight heavy with secrets. The vision of his father, the creature's face, it was all too much. He turned to Astrid, whose eyes were wide with fear. We need to find him now. They followed the tracks deeper into the wilds, the forest growing darker, the frost thicker. The air was alive with whispers, the curse's presence a constant. Pressure? Ingrid spotted a cave ahead, its entrance hidden by vines and ice. Leif's tracks led inside, and Eirik's heart pounded as he drew Stormfang inside. The cave was a labyrinth of ice and stone, its walls etched with runes that glowed faintly. The air was thick, the scent of blood and decay overwhelming. At the center stood Leif, his back to them, before another altar. He held the bloody dagger, its runes pulsing in time with the caves. "Leif," Eirik shouted, his voice echoing. "Step away from that altar." Leif turned, his face haggard, his eyes wild. "You don't understand, Eirik," he said, his voice trembling. "The curse chose you, but it's in all of us, our bloodline. I tried to stop it, to take your place. Sigrid knew, and she had to die." Astrid lunged, her dagger aimed at Leif's heart, but he dodged, grabbing her wrist, and twisting. Eirik charged, Stormfang swinging, but Leif raised the dagger, and the air shimmered, pushing him back. The runes on the altar flared, and a shadow rose, not the creature, but a figure cloaked in raven feathers, its face hidden but its voice unmistakable. "Their fathers, the oath is yours," it said, its voice a broken whisper. "The blade's heir must betray, or all will fall." Eirik's vision blurred, the cave spinning as memories flooded his mind, his father's death, the raid, the betrayal. He saw himself a boy, watching his father die, a shadowed figure, standing over him. Not Leif, but someone closer. Someone with his blood. "No," Eirik roared, swinging Stormfang at the shadow. It dissolved, but Leif was gone, his tracks vanishing into the cave's depths. The altar's runes faded, leaving only silence and the bone blade's faint glow. Astrid clutched her wrist, her face pale. "He's part of it," she said, "but so are we. The curse, it's our blood." Eirik's heart sank. He looked at Stormfang, its runes warm under his touch, and felt the truth closing in. The curse demanded a traitor, and the blade's heir was at its heart. But the shadow's face, the vision, it wasn't just Leif. It was him, Astrid, their father. The bloodline was the curse, and the traitor could be any of them. They returned to the village. The bone blade and dagger, heavy with secrets. The clan was waiting, their faces grim, Gudrun's accusations louder now. Eirik stood before them, Stormfang in hand, and made a silent vow. He would find the truth, even if it meant betraying his own blood. Chapter 9. The moon's cold embrace. The frostbitten wilds of Vargfjell were a frozen hell, their icy grip tightening with every step Eirik and his small band took into the forest's heart. The sky above was a shroud of gray, the stars hidden, as if the gods themselves turned away from Clan Hafna's plight. Eirik led the way, Stormfang sheathed at his side, its runes pulsing faintly like a heartbeat in the dark. Astrid walked beside him, her cloak dusted with snow, her green eyes sharp with a mix of determination and fear. Bjorn, Hakon, and Ingrid followed, their weapons drawn, their breaths visible in the frigid air. Leif's escape into the cave had left them shaken. His words, "The curse is in all of USA blade that cut deeper than any steel." The clan was on the brink of collapse, their trust in Eirik shattered by the mounting deaths and the shadow's accusations. The bone blade, still wrapped in cloth at Eirik's belt, and the bloodied dagger from Leif's altar weighed heavy, their runes a constant reminder of the curse's grip. The vision of their father, the shadows voiced the blade's heir, must betray haunted Eirik, sowing doubt not just in the clan but in his own heart. Was he the traitor? Was Astrid? Or was Leif's betrayal the key to breaking the curse? "We're close," Ingrid said, her voice low as she knelt by a frozen stream, brushing snow from a faint track. "Leif's moving fast, but he's bleeding. He can't hide forever." Eirik nodded, his hand on Stormfang. "He's leading us somewhere," he said, his voice grim. "The altars, the runes, they're connected. He knows where the curse began." Astrid's eyes flicked to the sword, then to Eirik. "And what if he's right?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if it's you, Eirik, the blade's heir?" He met her gaze, his heart heavy. "If it's me, I'll face it. But I won't let the clan fall. Not to Leif, not to the curse." Bjorn grunted, his scar twisting as he gripped his axe. "We find him, we end this." No more shadows, no more whispers. They pressed deeper into the wilds, the forest growing darker, the trees twisted into shapes that seemed to watch their every move. The air was thick with the scent of pine and decay, and the wind carried a low, rhythmic hum, like a chant from the gods themselves. Eirik's skin prickled, Stormfang's runes growing warmer, as if the sword sensed what lay ahead. The tracks led to a ravine, its walls steep and slick with ice. At its base was a circle of stones, ancient and weathered, their surfaces carved, with runes that glowed faintly under the dim light of a rising moon, not crimson yet, but heavy with the promise of blood. In the center stood another altar, larger than the others, its surface stained with dark, frozen blood. A single raven feather lay atop it, pinned by a bone fragment etched with the inverted Hrafn sigil. Astrid's breath caught. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "The place where the oath was made." Eirik approached the altar, Stormfang drawn, its runes blazing. The air hummed, the ground trembling slightly, and a vision flashed in his mind, his ancestor, a warrior cloaked in raven feathers, kneeling before this very altar, blood dripping from his hands as he spoke words to a shadow. The pact, the betrayal, the curse's birth. He staggered, clutching the sword, and Astrid grabbed his arm. "Eirik, what do you see?" "Our ancestor," he said, his voice hoarse. "He sealed the oath here. Blood for power. He betrayed his kin." Before Astrid could respond, a figure emerged from the shadow's leaf, his cloak torn, his face pale and streaked with blood. He held the bloodied dagger, its runes glowing, and his eyes were wild, not with fear but with purpose. "You found it?" he said, his voice low, "the heart of the curse." Eirik raised Stormfang, its runes flaring. "Step back, Leaf," he said. "You've run far enough." Leaf laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the ravine. "Run? I didn't run, cousin. I came here to end it. The curse demands blood. Eirik, yours, mine, Astrid's. It doesn't care, but it started here, and it ends here." Astrid stepped forward, her dagger drawn. "You killed Sigrid, Torvald. You admitted it. Don't play the savior now." Leaf's eyes softened, a flicker of regret passing through them. "I killed them to protect you both." Sigrid saw the truth. She knew the blade's heir was the key. "I thought I could take your place, Eirik. I thought my blood would be enough." Eirik's heart pounded, doubt and anger warring within him. "Enough lies," he said, stepping closer. "You betrayed us. The dagger, the altars, it's all you." Leaf shook his head, his grip tightening on the dagger. "You don't understand. The curse is in our bloodline. Our ancestor betrayed his brother to seal the oath. Your father tried to break it, and he died. I tried, and the curse turned on me. Now it's you, Eirik, the blade's heir." Before Eirik could respond, the moon broke through the clouds, its light pale but edged with crimson. The runes on the altar flared, and the air grew cold, the scent of decay overwhelming. A shadow rose from the altar, not a figure this time, but a mass of writhing mist, its eyes burning like twin fires. Its voice was a chorus of screams, tearing at Eirik's mind. "The oath demands blood," it said. "The blade's heir must pay." Eirik swung Stormfang, its runes blazing, but the shadow was faster, its claws slashing across his arm. Pain seared through him, but he held his ground, driving the blade into the mist. It screamed, its form flickering, but it didn't dissolve. Astrid lunged, her dagger flashing, but the shadow swiped at her, knocking her to the ground. Bjorn roared, his axe swinging, but the shadow caught it, twisting the weapon from his hands. Hakon and Ingrid attacked, their weapons useless against the mist. Leaf stepped forward, raising the bloodied dagger. "Take me," he shouted. "My blood, not theirs." The shadow turned, its eyes locking on Leaf, and for a moment, Eirik thought it would strike. But it laughed, a sound like breaking ice, and spoke. The oath is not yours to break. The blade's heir must choose. Eirik's vision blurred, the pain in his arms spreading like fire. He saw his father again, kneeling before the altar, blood pooling around him. But this time, the shadowed figure wasn't Leif, it was Eirik himself, holding Stormfang, its blade dripping with blood. He staggered, the sword heavy in his hand, as the truth hit him. The curse didn't just demand a traitor, it demanded him. Eirik, Astrid shouted, scrambling to her feet. She grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with fear. Don't listen to it, it's lying. But Leif's voice cut through, sharp and desperate. It's not a lie, Astrid. The runes, the visions, they all point to him. He has to die, or we all do. Eirik's heart stopped. He looked at Leif, then at Astrid, their faces blurred by the mist. The shadow loomed, its claws reaching for him, and he swung Stormfang again, its runes blazing brighter than ever. The blade bit deep, and the shadow screamed, dissolving into the air. But its voice lingered. The moon's embrace is cold. Choose, or fall. The ravine was silent, the altar's runes fading. Leif stood frozen, the dagger trembling in his hand. Eirik's arm bled, the pain grounding him as he faced his cousin. Why? He asked, his voice raw. Why protect me, if you believe I'm the traitor? Leif's eyes were haunted. Because your family, Eirik. I thought I could take your place, spare you. But the curse, it's stronger than me. Astrid stepped between them, her dagger raised. Enough, she said, her voice shaking. We're not sacrificing anyone. We find another way. But the clan's warriors were shaken, their faces pale. Hakon clutched his axe, his arm still bleeding from the shadow's strike. Jarl, he said, his voice low. That thing knew you. It wanted you. Eirik didn't answer, his gaze on Stormfang. The sword's runes were dull now, but he felt their weight, their truth. The vision of himself, standing over his father, was too vivid, too real. He looked at Astrid, her face a mask of defiance, and felt a chill. She was his sister, his blood, but the curse was in them both. They returned to the village, Leif bound, but unresisting, his silence heavier than chains. The clan was waiting, their faces grim, Gudrun at their head. You bring the traitor, she said, her voice like stone. But what of the curse? The shadow spoke of the blade's heir. Eirik held up Stormfang, its runes glinting in the firelight. The curse is our bloodline, he said, his voice steady, despite the doubt in his heart. Our ancestors' betrayal started it. I'm the blade's heir, but I'm not the traitor. We'll break this curse, together, the clan murmured, their fear outweighing their trust. Astrid stood by Eirik, but her eyes were haunted, her hand on her dagger. Leif watched from his bonds, his expression unreadable. As the moon rose, its light cold and unyielding, Eirik felt the curse's embrace, and the shadow's words echoed, choose or fall. Chapter 10. Kin against kin. The longhouse was a crucible of fear and fury, its walls trembling under the weight of the storm that battered Vargfjell. The fire in the hearth burned low, casting jagged shadows across the faces of Clan Half, who stood in tense clusters, their eyes darting between Eirik, Astrid, and Leif. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and iron, the bloodied dagger and bone blade lying on the table like relics of a doomed saga. Leif knelt, hands bound, his fox-like eyes glinting with defiance. While Eirik stood at the head of the hall, Stormfang sheathed, but heavy with the curse's truth. The shadow's words from the ravine choose, or fall echoed in his mind, a warning that cut deeper with every passing moment. Astrid stood at Eirik's side, her cloak dusted with frost, her green eyes burning with a mix of loyalty and fear. Bjorn guarded the door, his scarred face set in a grim line, his axe ready. Hakon and Ingrid flanked Leif, their weapons drawn, their trust in their Jarl fraying like a worn sail. The clan's murmurs were a low growl, their faith in Eirik crumbling under the weight of Leif's accusations and the curse's relentless grip. The parchment from the cairn, with its blood-stained runes, declaring the blade's heir as the traitor, lay like a death sentence between them. Gudrun, the elder, stepped forward, her white braids stark against her dark furs, her voice sharp as a winter gale. "You speak of unity, Jarl," she said, her eyes locked on Eirik, "but the shadow named you the blade's heir. Your bloodline is the curse's root. How do we trust you when the gods themselves point to your guilt?" The clan's murmurs grew louder, their fear turning to anger. Eirik's hand tightened on Stormfang's hilt, its runes pulsing faintly, as if urging him to act. "I am your Jarl," he said, his voice a low growl that silenced the hall. "I have fought for this clan, bled for it. The curse is in our blood, yes, but I'm not the traitor." Leif admitted to killing Sigrid, Torvald. He built the altars, wielded the dagger. If anyone's betrayed us, it's him. Leif's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "I killed too. Protect you, Eirik," he said, his voice raw. "Sigrid saw you as the traitor, the blade's heir. I thought I could take your place, spare the clan. But the curse, it's stronger than me. It's in you, in Astrid, in all of us." Astrid's hand twitched toward her dagger, her face pale but fierce. "Lies," she spat, stepping toward Leif. "You're twisting the truth to save yourself. The shadow spoke of the bloodline, not just Eirik. Why should we believe you?" The clan's eyes darted between them, their suspicion a living thing. Bjorn shifted, his axe gleaming in the firelight. "Enough talk," he said, his voice rough. "Leif's bound, but he's still a threat. Let's end this, Jarl." Eirik hesitated, his gaze flicking to Astrid, then to Leif. The shadow's words, the visions of his father, the runes on Stormfang, they all pointed to him, but Leif's actions were undeniable. He stepped toward his cousin, Stormfang drawn, its runes flaring. "You've got one chance, Leif," he said. "Tell us everything. The altars, the oath, the curse. No more games." Leif's smile was thin, almost sorrowful. "The oath was made here, in Vargfjell," he said. "Our ancestor, Hraft the Black, betrayed his brother for power, sealed it with blood at the cairn. The shadow god granted strength, but cursed the bloodline. Every 30 years, the blood moon demands a traitor's blood to break it or the clan falls. Your father tried, Eirik. He died for it. Sigrid saw you as the next, so I silenced her. I thought I could be the traitor, but the curse, once you..." Eirik's heart pounded, the vision of his father kneeling before the altar, flashing in his mind. He saw himself, holding Stormfang, its blade dripping with blood. The clan's eyes were on him, their fear a weight he could barely carry. "And the altars?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm within. "The bones, the dagger?" Leif's eyes darkened. "I built them to draw the curse out, to offer my blood instead. But it wasn't enough. The shadow wants the blade's heir. It wants you." Before Eirik could respond, a scream tore through the longhouse. The doors burst open, letting in a gust of icy wind, and a figure cloaked in shadows. It was no man, but the creature from the ravine, its form more solid now, its eyes burning like twin fires. Its bone blade gleamed, etched with runes that matched Stormfang's. The clan scrambled, drawing weapons, but the creature's voice was a scream that shook the hall. "The oath demands blood," it roared. "The blade's heir must fall." I raised Stormfang, its runes blazing, and charged. The creature met him, its bone blade clashing against steel, sending sparks into the air. The impact shook Eirik's arm, but he held his ground, driving the creature back. Astrid lunged her, dagger flashing, but the creature swiped at her, its claws grazing her shoulder. She staggered, blood seeping through her cloak, but her eyes burned with defiance. Bjorn roared, his axe swinging, but the creature was faster, its blade slicing across his chest. He fell, clutching the wound, as Hakon and Ingrid attacked. There, weapons useless against the shadow. The clan screamed, some fleeing, others frozen in terror. Gudrun stood, her voice rising in a chant to Odin, but the creature's laughter drowned her out. Eirik swung Stormfang again, its runes flaring brighter, and this time the blade bit deep, drawing a scream from the creature. Its form flickered, revealing Leif's face for a moment, then their father's, then Eirik's own. He froze, the sight shaking him to his core. "What are you?" he shouted, his voice raw. "The curse," it hissed, its eyes locking on his. "The bloodline's sign. You are the traitor, Eirik Hrafnsson. You, or your kin." Astrid tackled the creature, her dagger embedding in its side. It screamed, dissolving into mist, but its voice lingered. "Kin against kin. Choose, or all will fall." The hall was silent, the air heavy with blood and fear. Bjorn lay wounded, his breathing shallow, while Astrid clutched her shoulder, her face pale. The clan stared at Eirik, their eyes wide with terror and accusation. Leif, still bound, watched in silence, his expression unreadable. Eirik helped Astrid to her feet, his hand trembling. "You're hurt," he said, his voice low. "I'll live," she said, her eyes meeting his. "But that thing? It showed your face, Eirik, and mine." He didn't answer, his gaze falling to Stormfang. The sword's runes were dull now, but he felt their weight, their truth. The creature's words kin against kin cut deeper than any blade. He looked at Leif, then at Astrid, and felt the curse's grip tighten. The bloodline was the curse, and the traitor was one of them. "We can't stay here," Eirik said, turning to the clan. "The curse is growing stronger. We take Leif, we go to the cairn, and we end this now." The clan murmured, their fear outweighing their doubt, but Gudrun stepped forward, her voice cold. "And if you're the traitor, Jarl, will you sacrifice yourself?" Eirik met her gaze, his heart heavy. "If it comes to that, I will." They set out at midnight, a small group: Eirik, Astrid, Hakon, Ingrid, and Leif, still bound, but walking with a strange calm. Bjorn stayed behind, too wounded to join them, his loyalty to Eirik unshaken despite his pain. The cairn loomed under the crimson-tinged moon, its stones glowing faintly with the curse's power. The air was thick, the wind carrying whispers that seemed to mock their steps. At the cairn, Eirik placed Stormfang against the blood-smeared stone, its runes aligning with those carved into it. The ground trembled, the air humming with a force that made his skin crawl. Leif watched, his eyes dark with something Eirik couldn't read: regret, perhaps, or resignation. "Tell me," Eirik said, his voice hard. "If I'm the traitor, how do I break it?" Leif's voice was low, almost a whisper. "The curse demands betrayal, Eirik, blood for blood. You must offer your kin's blood, or your own. There's no other way." Astrid's face paled, her hand tightening on her dagger. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "There has to be another way. We're not sacrificing anyone." But before Eirik could respond, a shadow rose from the cairn, its form cloaked in raven feathers, its face shifting between their father's, Leif's, Astrid's, and Eirik's own. Its voice was a scream that tore at their minds. "Kin against kin," it roared. "The oath demands blood." Eirik raised Stormfang, its runes blazing, but the shadow was faster, its claws slashing across his chest. Pain seared through him, but he swung, the blade biting deep. The shadow screamed, its form flickering, and for a moment, Eirik saw Astrid's face, her eyes wide with terror. "No," he shouted, staggering back. Astrid lunged, her dagger aimed at the shadow, but it turned, its claws reaching for her. Leif broke free, grabbing the bone blade from Eirik's belt, and slashed at the shadow, his own blood mixing with the frost. The shadow dissolved, its scream echoing, but Leif collapsed, his chest heaving. "It's you, Eirik," he gasped. "Or her. The curse won't stop." Eirik knelt beside him, his heart torn. Astrid stood frozen, her dagger trembling in her hand, her eyes locked on Eirik. The clan watched, their fear a living thing, as the moon's cold embrace tightened around them all. Chapter 11. The Price of Redemption. The cairn stood like a wound in the earth, its stones bathed in the crimson glow of the blood moon, which hung heavy in the starless sky. The air was thick with the scent of frost and blood, the wind carrying whispers that clawed at Eirik's mind. He knelt beside Leif, who lay gasping on the frozen ground, the bone blade clutched in his trembling hand, its runes fading like dying embers. Stormfang rested in Eirik's grip, its own runes pulsing in time with his heartbeat, as if the sword itself knew the truth that Eirik could no longer deny. The curse demanded blood, and the blade's air was at its heart. Astrid stood nearby, her cloak torn, her shoulder bleeding from the shadow's claws. Her green eyes were wide with fear and defiance, her dagger trembling in her hand as she stared at Eirik, then at Leif. Hakon and Ingrid flanked them, their weapons drawn but their faces pale, the weight of the curse's power crushing their resolve. The clan's remnants watched from a distance, their silhouettes stark against the moon's glow, their trust in their Jarl shattered by the shadow's words. Kin against kin. Leif's voice was a rasp, blood trickling from his lips. "It's you, Eirik," he said, his eyes dark with pain, "or her. The curse won't stop until one of you bleeds." Eirik's heart pounded. The shadow screamed the oath demands blood, echoing in his skull. He looked at Astrid, his sister, his fiercest ally, and felt a chill deeper than the frost. The visions, the runes, the shadows, shifting faces, they all pointed to their bloodline, to Stormfang, to him. But Astrid's face in the shadow's form, her eyes mirrored in its ember glow, had shaken him to his core. Was she the traitor? Was he, or was the curse playing them all, turning kin against kin? "Enough," Eirik said, his voice steady, despite the storm within. He stood, Stormfang gleaming in the moonlight. "Leif, you killed Sigrid, Torvald. You built the altars. If there's blood to be spilled, it's yours." Leif's smile was weak, almost pitying. "I tried to take your place, cousin. I thought my blood would be enough. But the curse wants the blade's air. It wants her." His eyes flicked to Astrid, who stiffened, her dagger raised. "Don't," Astrid said, her voice sharp but trembling. "Don't you dare put this on me, Leif. I've fought for this clan, for Eirik. I'm not the traitor." Hakon stepped forward, his axe trembling in his hands. "Then who is?" "Astrid. The shadow named you both. The clan's dying, and we're running out of time." Ingrid's bow was raised, her eyes darting between Eirik and Astrid. "Jarl," she said, her voice low, "we trust you, but the runes, the visions, they all point to you. What do we do?" Eirik's chest tightened, the clan's fear a weight he could barely carry. He looked at Stormfang, its runes glowing brighter, and felt a pull, like a thread tying him to the cairn. "We end this," he said, his voice hard. "The oath was made here, it breaks here." He stepped toward the blood-smeared stone, raised, its runes aligning with those carved into the cairn. The ground trembled, the air humming with a force that made his skin crawl. Astrid followed, her dagger ready, her eyes locked on Leif. "If you're lying," she said to him, "I'll cut your heart out myself." Leif's eyes softened, a flicker of something regret, perhaps passing through them. "I'm not lying, Astrid, but you'll see soon enough." Before Eirik could place Stormfang against the stone, a scream tore through the air, not the shadows, but human, raw, and desperate. From the shadows of the cairn, a figure lunged. Gudrun, her white braids swinging, a dagger in her hand, its blade etched with the inverted Herfin sigil. She aimed for Eirik, her eyes wild with fanatic zeal. "The blade's heir must die," she shouted. "The curse demands it." Eirik dodged, Stormfang swinging, but Gudrun was fast, her dagger grazing his arm. Astrid tackled her, pinning her to the ground, but Gudrun fought like a cornered beast, her strength unnatural. "You're the traitor, Eirik," she screamed. "Your bloodline cursed us. I'll end it. Hakon and Ingrid rushed to help, but the ground shook, the cairn's runes flaring with crimson light. A shadow rose, not the creature, not their father, but a mass of writhing mist, its eyes burning like twin suns. Its voice was a chorus of screams, tearing at their minds. Blood for blood, it roared. The oath demands the blade's heir. Eirik swung Stormfang, its runes blazing, but the shadow was faster, its claws slashing across his chest. Pain seared through him, but he held his ground, driving the blade into the mist. It screamed, its form flickering, and for a moment, he saw his own face. Twisted with rage and despair, Astrid wrestled Gudrun's dagger away, pinning the elder's arms. "Why?" she shouted. "Why betray us?" Gudrun's eyes were wild, her voice a hiss. "I saw the truth in Sigrid's bones. The blade's heir is the curse's heart. Eirik must die, or we all do." Leif staggered to his feet, the bone blade in his hand. "She's right," he said, his voice trembling. "I tried to spare you, Eirik, but the curse won't let go. It's you or Astrid." Eirik's vision blurred, the pain in his chest spreading like fire. He saw his father again, kneeling before the cairn, blood pooling around him. But this time, the shadowed figure wasn't him, which was Astrid, her dagger raised, her eyes cold. He staggered, Stormfang heavy in his hand, as the truth hit him. The curse didn't just demand his blood. It demanded a betrayal, a choice between kin. "No," Eirik roared, swinging Stormfang at the shadow. The blade bit deep, its runes flaring brighter, and the shadow screamed, dissolving into the air. But its voice lingered. "The price of redemption is blood. Choose, or fall." The cairn was silent, the runes fading, but Gudrun's screams filled the void. "You can't escape it, Eirik. The blade's heir must die." Astrid tightened her grip on Gudrun, her face pale. "Shut up," she said, her voice shaking. "You're not helping." Eirik turned to Leif, his heart torn. "You knew," he said, his voice raw. "You knew Gudrun was part of this." Leif's eyes dropped, his shoulders sagging. "She came to me after Sigrid's death. She saw the same visions, believed the same truth. I thought I could protect you, take your place. But the curse, it's too strong." Hakon and Ingrid bound Gudrun, her struggles weakening, as the clan watched in stunned silence. Eirik's chest heaved, blood seeping through his cloak, but he stood tall, Stormfang steady in his hand. "The curse wants a traitor," he said, his voice carrying over the wind. "But I won't betray my kin. There's another way." Astrid's eyes met his, her face a mask of fear and resolve. "What way, Eirik?" "The shadow, the runes, they all say it's you or me." He didn't answer, his gaze falling to Stormfang. The sword's runes were warm, their glow pulsing with a life of their own. He remembered Sigrid's prophecy, the parchment's words. The traitor's blood will break the oath, or the clan will fall. But there was something else, a fragment of the runes. He'd overlooked a word for redemption, hidden in the twists of the sigils. "We go to the altar," Eirik said, his voice firm. "The one in the ravine. That's where the oath was made. That's where we break it." The clan murmured, their fear tempered by his resolve, but Leif's voice cut through, soft and broken. "You can't break it without blood, Eirik. The shadow god doesn't forgive." "Then I'll face it," Eirik said, his eyes locking on Leif's, but not alone. They marched to the ravine, the moon's crimson light casting long shadows. Gudrun was bound, her chant silenced, but her eyes burned with zeal. Leif walked beside her, his hands free but his spirit broken. Astrid stayed close to Eirik, her shoulder bandaged, her dagger ready. Hakon and Ingrid followed their trust, in their jarl hanging by a thread. The ravine was a frozen tomb, its stones glowing with the curse's power. The altar stood at its center, its blood-stained surface pulsing with runes that matched Stormfang's. Eirik placed the sword against it, the runes aligning, and the ground trembled, the air thick with the scent of decay. A shadow rose, not the creature or their father, but a figure cloaked in raven feathers. Its face hidden, but its voice a chorus of their bloodline scenes. The oath demands blood, it said. The blade's heir must pay. Eirik stepped forward, Stormfang raised. I'm the heir, he said, his voice steady. If it's my blood you want, take it. But spare my clan. Astrid grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. No, Eirik, there's another way. But the shadow laughed, its claws reaching for him. Eirik swung Stormfang, its runes blazing, but the shadow was faster, its claws slashing across his side. Pain seared through him, but he held his ground, driving the blade into the shadow's form. It screamed, its face shifting his father's Leif's, Astrid's his own. Leif lunged, the bone blade in his hand, and slashed at the shadow, his blood mixing with Eirik's on the altar. Take me, he shouted. I'm Herfin's blood, too. The shadow screamed, its form dissolving, but its voice lingered. Redemption demands sacrifice. Kin against kin. Eirik staggered, blood pooling at his feet, and looked at Astrid. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with tears. Eirik, she whispered, it's us. The curse, it's our blood. He nodded, his vision blurring. The runes on Stormfang glowed brighter, and he saw the truth. Redemption wasn't just blood. It was a choice, a betrayal of the curse itself. He raised the sword, its runes blazing, and drove it into the altar, the blade shattering with a sound like thunder. The ravine shook, the runes fading, and the shadow's scream died in the wind. Eirik fell to his knees, blood seeping from his wounds, but the air was lighter, the curse's grip loosening. Astrid knelt beside him, her hands on his face, her voice trembling. You did it, she said. You broke it. But Leif's voice was a whisper. His body slumped against the altar. Not yet, he said, his eyes fading. The price is paid. He fell still, his blood pooling with Eirik's, and the moon's crimson light faded, leaving only darkness. Chapter 12. The final oath. The ravine was a frozen grave, its stones silent under the fading crimson glow of the blood moon. The altar at its center, stained with the mingled blood of Eirik and Leif, stood as a testament to the curse's relentless hunger. Eirik knelt beside Leif's body, his cousin's lifeless eyes staring at the sky, the bone blade still clutched in his hand. Stormfang lay shattered, its runes dark, fragments scattered across the altar like the broken pieces of Clan Hafin's legacy. Astrid stood beside Eirik, her shoulder bleeding, her green eyes filled with grief and defiance. Hakon and Ingrid held their ground, their weapons lowered but their faces pale, while the clan watched from the ravine's edge, their silhouettes trembling in the moonlight. The air was heavy, the wind stilled, but the curse's presence lingered, a shadow that clung to the edges of Eirik's mind. Leif's final words, the price is paid, echoed. But the weight of the shadow's demand, kin against kin, told Eirik. The curse wasn't broken. Not yet. His chest inside burned from the shadow's claws, blood seeping through his cloak. But he stood, Stormfang's hilt still in his hand, its broken blade a symbol of his own fractured resolve. Astrid's voice was a whisper, raw with emotion. Leif gave his blood, she said, her eyes on her cousin's body. Why isn't it enough? Eirik's heart clenched. Because the curse wants more, he said, his voice hoarse. It wants the blade's heir. It wants me or you. Hakon stepped forward, his axe trembling in his hands. Jarl, he said, his voice low. Leif said it was you. The shadow named you. What do we do? Ingrid's bow was slack, her eyes darting between Eirik and Astrid. The clan's breaking, she said, good runes stirring them up. They think you're the traitor, Eirik, or her. Eirik turned to the clan, their faces a mix of fear and anger. Gudrun stood among them, her white braid stark against the darkness, her eyes burning with zeal. The curse spoke true. She shouted, the blade's heir is the traitor. Eirik, Astrid, one of you must pay, or we all die. The clan's murmurs grew into a roar, their weapons glinting in the moonlight. Eirik raised his hand, silencing them, though his heart pounded. "I am your Jarl," he said, his voice carrying over the wind. "I've fought for you, bled for you. The curse is in our bloodline, yes, but I won't let it take us. We end this tonight." Astrid's eyes met his, her face pale but fierce. "How, Eirik?" "Stormfang's broken. Leaf's dead. The shadow's still out there." He looked at the altar, its runes faint but pulsing, and felt a pull, like a thread tying him to the curse's heart. "The oath was made here," he said. "Hrafn the Black betrayed his kin, sealed it with blood. Leaf tried to take my place, but the curse demands the blade's heir. I'll face it." Astrid grabbed his arm, her grip tight. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "We do this together. If it's our blood, it's both of us." Eirik's chest tightened, the shadow's words kin against kin cutting, deeper than his wounds. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from the curse's hunger. But the visions, the runes, the shadows, shifting faces, they all pointed to both of them. He nodded, unable to speak, and turned to the altar. The clan watched, their fear a palpable force, as Eirik and Astrid knelt before the altar. He placed Stormfang's broken hilt on the stone, its runes flaring briefly, while Astrid set her dagger beside it, its blade stained with her own blood. The ground trembled, the air humming with a force that made Eirik's skin crawl. The runes on the altar glowed, crimson and fierce, and a shadow rose, not the creature, not their father, but a figure cloaked in raven feathers, its face hidden, but its voice a chorus of their bloodline's scenes. "The final oath," it said, its eyes burning like twin fires. "Blood for blood. The blade's heir must betray, or all will fall." Eirik stood, his wounds screaming, and faced the shadow. "I'm the heir," he said, his voice steady. "If it's my blood you want, take it, but spare my clan, my sister." The shadow laughed, a sound like shattering ice. "The oath demands betrayal. Kin against kin. Choose, or all will fall." Astrid stepped forward, her dagger raised. "Then take me," she said, her voice fierce. "I'm Hrafn's blood, too. If Eirik's the traitor, I'll pay the price." The clan gasped, their voices rising in protest, but Eirik grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "No, Astrid," he said, his voice breaking. "This is my burden, my blade, my blood." But the shadow's eyes shifted, locking on Astrid, and for a moment, Eirik saw her face in its form, her eyes cold and distant. A vision flashed: Astrid standing over him, her dagger dripping with his blood, her face twisted with grief and resolve. He staggered, the pain in his chest more than physical, as the truth hit him. The curse didn't just demand his blood. It demanded a betrayal, a choice between kin. "No," Eirik roared, raising Stormfang's broken hilt. The runes flared, and he drove it into the altar, the stone cracking under the force. The shadow screamed, its form flickering, but it lunged, its claws reaching for Astrid. Eirik threw himself in front of her, the claws slashing across his back. Pain exploding through him, Astrid screamed, her dagger flashing as she struck the shadow, its form dissolving into mist, but its voice lingered. "The oath is not broken. Betray, or fall." Eirik fell to his knees, blood pooling beneath him, his vision blurring. Astrid knelt beside him, her hands on his face, her eyes filled with tears. "Eirik, stay with me," she said, her voice trembling. "We can't lose you." He looked at her, his sister, his kin, and saw the shadow's face in hers. The curse was in their blood, and the traitor could be either of them. He gripped her hand, his voice a whisper. "Astrid, if it's me, if I'm the traitor." "No," she said, her voice fierce. "You're not. We'll find another way." But the clan's shouts grew louder, Gudrun's voice rising above them. The shadow named them both. She cried, "One must die, or we all do." Hakon and Ingrid stepped forward, their weapons raised, their faces torn between loyalty and fear. Jarl, Hakon said, his voice low. We can't wait. The curse is killing us. What do we do? Eirik stood, his body screaming in protest, and faced the clan. The curse wants betrayal, he said, his voice carrying over the wind. But I won't betray my kin. There's another way: redemption, not sacrifice. He turned to the altar, the runes still pulsing, and saw a faint symbol. He'd missed a rune for redemption, hidden among the jagged lines of betrayal. He traced it, his fingers trembling, and a vision flooded his mind. Hraft, the Black, kneeling before the altar, his brother's blood on his hands. But a second figure, cloaked in light, offering a path to break the oath. Not with betrayal, but with unity, with love. Eirik's heart pounded. The curse was born of betrayal, he said, his voice steady. But it can be broken with sacrifice, not of kin, but of the oath itself. We reject the shadow god, together. Astrid's eyes widened, understanding dawning. The bloodline, she said. We offer our blood, not to betray, but to redeem. Eirik nodded, his vision blurring as he drew his dagger, the one he'd carried since childhood. He cut his palm, blood dripping onto the altar, and handed the dagger to Astrid. She hesitated, her eyes locked on his, then cut her own palm, her blood mixing with his. The runes flared, the ground shaking, and the shadow rose again, its scream a storm of rage. You cannot defy the oath. It roared, its claws reaching for them both. But Eirik and Astrid stood together, their hands joined, their blood pooling, on the altar. We are Fday, Eirik said, his voice a challenge to the gods. We break your oath, not with betrayal, but with our bond. The shadow lunged, but the runes blazed, a light erupting from the altar, pure and blinding. The shadow screamed, its form dissolving, and the cairn shook, stones crumbling as the light consumed the runes. The air cleared, the scent of decay fading, and the moon's crimson glow softened. Its light, pale and clean. Eirik fell to his knees, his strength fading, but Astrid held him, her tears falling on his face. You did it, she whispered. It's over. The clan watched, their fear turning to awe. Hakon and Ingrid lowered their weapons, their faces softened with relief. Gudrun stood silent, her zeal extinguished, her eyes wide with wonder. The curse's grip was gone, the air lighter. The ravine no longer a grave, but a place of rebirth. But Eirik's wounds were deep, his blood staining the frost. He looked at Astrid, his sister, his kin, and smiled weakly. If it was me, he said, his voice fading, I'm glad it's done. Astrid's grip tightened, her voice fierce. You're not dying, Eirik, not today. The clan rushed forward, their hands lifting him, their voices a chorus of hope. The blood moon faded, the dawn breaking over Vargfjell, its light a promise of redemption. But Eirik's eyes lingered on Stormfang's broken hilt, and he knew the final oath was kept not with betrayal, but with love.
Chapter 13. Dawn of the Raven. The dawn broke over Vargfjell with a hesitant light, its pale rays piercing the frost-laden air like spears through a shield wall. The ravine, once a tomb of shadow and blood, stood quiet, its stones scattered, the altar reduced to rubble. The blood moon had faded, its crimson curse lifted, leaving the sky a soft gray, heavy with the promise of snow. Clan Herfin stood in a ragged circle, their faces worn but alive with a fragile hope. Eirik lay on a makeshift litter, his chest and side bound with strips of cloth, his breathing shallow but steady. Stormfang's broken hilt rested beside him, its runes dark, a relic of the curse they had shattered. Astrid knelt at his side, her green eyes red-rimmed but fierce, her wounded shoulder bandaged but unbowed. Her hand gripped his, her touch a lifeline in the cold. Hakon and Ingrid stood nearby, their weapons sheathed, their faces softened with relief. Gudrun, her zeal extinguished, stood at the edge of the group, her white braids swaying in the wind, her eyes downcast. The clan's murmurs were soft now, their fear replaced by awe and exhaustion. The curse was gone, its weight lifted, but the scars it left on their bodies, their trust, their bloodline would linger. Eirik's eyes fluttered open, his voice a rasp. "Astrid," he said, his gaze locking on hers. "Is it truly over?" She nodded, her tears falling, but her smile fierce. "The shadow's gone. The runes are dead. You did it, Eirik. We did it." He tried to sit up, pain searing through him, but her hand on his chest held him down. "Rest," she said, her voice firm. "The clan needs you alive, not a martyr." Hakon stepped forward, his axe resting on his shoulder, his voice low. "Jarl, the curse is broken, but the clan's still shaken. Leif's, death, Gudrun, betrayal, they're asking what comes next." Eirik's gaze drifted to Leif's body, covered with a cloak, the bone blade still in his hand. His cousin had tried to take his place, to spare him, but the curse had claimed him anyway. Eirik's heart clenched, the weight of his kin's sacrifice heavier than his wounds. "We honor our dead," he said, his voice steady despite the pain. "Leif, Sigrid, Torvald, Sven, they gave their lives for us. We rebuild, together." Ingrid's eyes were soft, her bow slung across her back. "And good?" she asked, glancing at the elder, who stood apart. Her face a mask of shame. Eirik looked at Gudrun, her betrayal, a wound as deep as any the shadow had inflicted. "She believed she was saving us," he said, his voice heavy. "But she broke our trust. She faced judgment, but not today. Today, we heal." The clan nodded, their faces a mix of relief and resolve. They lifted Eirik's litter, carrying him back to the village, the frost crunching under their boots. Astrid walked beside him, her hand never leaving his, her eyes scanning the horizon, as if expecting the shadow to return. But the air was clear, the whispers of the old gods silent, replaced by the soft howl of the wind in the longhouse. The clan gathered, the fire roaring anew, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold of the ravine. Eirik was laid on a bench, furs piled around him, his wounds tended by the clan's healer, an old woman named Frida whose hands were steady despite her years. Astrid sat nearby, her dagger sheathed but close, her eyes never leaving Eirik's. Frida's voice was soft as she worked. "You're strong, Jarl, but the shadow's claws cut deep. Rest, or you'll join your ancestors too soon." Eirik managed a weak smile. "Not yet, Frida. The clan needs me." She snorted, her hands deft as she stitched his wounds. "The clan needs a leader, not a corpse. Listen to your sister." Astrid's lips twitched, a flicker of her old fire returning. "He never listens," she said, her voice teasing but thick with emotion. "But he'll live. He has to." As the clans settled, their voices a low hum of hope. Eirik's mind drifted to the altar, the shadow's final scream. Redemption demands sacrifice. Kin against kin. He and Astrid had offered their blood, not in betrayal, but in unity, and it had been enough. But the visions his father, Leif, Astrid, himself still haunted him. The curse was broken, but its truth lingered. Their bloodline was its root, and the blade's air was its heart. He looked at Stormfang's broken hilt, its runes dark, but heavy with history. "Astrid," he said, his voice low, "the sword. It's more than a blade. It's our legacy, our curse." She nodded, her eyes on the hilt. "Haraf, the Black forged it, sealed the oath with it. When you shattered it, you broke his pact. But the clan needs a new symbol, Eirik, something to unite us." He reached for the hilt, pain flaring as he lifted it. "Then we'll forge a new one," he said. "Not for betrayal, but for redemption." The clan's murmurs grew quieter, their eyes on their Jarl. Hakon stepped forward, his voice steady. "We'll follow you, Jarl, but the wilds are still dangerous. The frost, the wolves what's left of us, needs to be strong." Eirik nodded, his strength fading, but his resolve unbroken. "We rebuild," he said. We honor our dead, we strengthen our walls, and we face the future as one. No more curses, no more betrayals. Gudrun was brought before him, her hands bound, her eyes downcast. Jarl, she said, her voice trembling, I thought I was saving the clan. I saw the visions, heard the shadow. I was wrong. Eirik's gaze was hard but not cruel. You broke our trust, Gudrun, he said, but you're Hoffen too. You'll work to rebuild what you tore apart. Exile is too easy. She nodded, tears falling, and the clan accepted his judgment. Their unity, fragile, but growing. As the day wore on, the longhouse filled with the sounds of life, laughter, stories, the clink of horns. The clan was healing, their wounds physical and emotional, but their spirit unbroken. That night, as the clan slept, Eirik and Astrid slipped out to the shore, where the waves roared against the cliffs. The moon was pale, its crimson gone, and the stars glimmered faintly through the clouds. Eirik carried Stormfang's broken hilt, Astrid her dagger, and together they stood at the water's edge, the wind carrying the scent of salt and freedom. We need to let it go, Astrid said, her voice soft. The sword, the cursets, part of us, but it doesn't define us. Eirik nodded, his heart heavy, but lighter than it had been in days. He held up the hilt, its runes dark, and tossed it into the sea. The waves swallowed it, a final offering to the gods, not of blood, but of release. Astrid did the same with her dagger, its blade sinking into the depths. They stood in silence, their hands joined, the bond of kin stronger than any curse. What? Now? Astrid asked, her eyes on the horizon. We lead, Eirik said, his voice steady. We rebuild. We make a new legacy, one of strength, not betrayal. She smiled, a rare, genuine smile that warmed the cold night. Together, always, he said, his hand tightening on hers. They returned to the longhouse, the clan waiting, their faces lit by the fire's glow. Eirik stood before them, his wounds a testament to his sacrifice, his eyes burning with purpose. Clan, Hraft, he said, his voice carrying over the crackle of the fire. The curse is gone, but our story isn't. We are the Raven, fierce and free. We'll face the frost, the sea, the gods themselves, and we'll never break. The clan roared, their horns raised, their unity reborn. Astrid stood beside him, her fire restored, and for the first time, Eirik felt the weight of the curse lift, replaced by the strength of his people. The dawn was new, the raven's wings spread wide, and Vargfjell was theirs once more. But as they feasted, a single raven perched on the longhouse roof, its eyes glinting in the firelight. It watched, silent and knowing, and though the curse was broken, Eirik felt a chill. The gods were never truly silent, and the raven's gaze was a reminder. Their bloodline saga was far from over.